No, that's right. I'm back. I'm like Batman because I've returned. I'm like Sister Act 2 because I'm back in the habit. I'm like Terminator. I was going to say I'll be back. I just said I'm back, so I can't say I'll be back. That doesn't make any sense. I'm still like Terminator. Right. I'm like a cold, emotionless man who has trouble connecting with people. It's good to be back. Play that funky music, white boy.
This is a broadcast from the Pop Cult Pod.
Welcome back to the Pop Cult Pod. I am your cult leader, Tompott. As you can see in this convenient graphic that's located there. Goodbye, graphic. You're like, what? Graphic? Son, I'm listening to this on the Spotify, on Apple iTunes. I'm listening to this on the cloud of sound. What do you speak of, sir? Well, first of all, I commend you on your diction, sir. It's very nice. But what I'm talking about is that the Pop Cult Pod is now video-based on YouTube. Doesn't mean you can't get the podcast in your ears and not your eyes. That sounds terrifying. But it does mean that from now on, if you want to see, visual reference, if you want to see me talking about stuff, getting animated, maybe something funny will happen on camera live. I mean, not live. Never live. So, as I mentioned, you can look at the podcast on YouTube now, along with a load of other stuff. So please check it out, Pop Cult Pod on YouTube. But it's not going to change anything. You're still going to be able to listen to the podcast on all the usual platforms. I've been away for a while. It's been a while. There's like 3 podcasts that make that joke now. It's been a while. I'm not going to get into it, but there's a lot of stuff we have to cover. A lot of news, which around here, as you know, is called the new news.
Not just news. Not just new news.
You've got mail.
But the new.
As I said, a lot of news to cover. I mean, probably the biggest news about the world in general, of course, is the pandemic and the ongoing moving around and messing up of Hollywood because of it. Because as you can see behind me, if you're watching on YouTube, there's a woman behind me with a sword. It's Mulan. If you're listening to the audio version, it's Mulan. And there's not actually a woman. Yeah, there's not actually a woman behind me with a sword. I just had to check. So Mulan, why am I starting with Mulan? There's a lot of stuff that's been delayed, but Mulan is one of the bigger ones. And it's also one of the more interesting cases. Disney made a lot of changes to their schedule. We'll talk through a few of the smaller ones. They moved The Last Duel, which is Ben Affleck and Matt Damon's kind of reuniting to make a movie. Although there's another writer there as well. But let's be honest, they're not going to be like Affleck, Damon, another person. It's going to be Affleck and Damon together again. They've done it. I think this is the reason also that Matt Damon was stuck in Ireland for a while, which was like one of the bright sunspots of the whole COVID thing. Just seeing him being a regular person. I mean, not that regular, but it was delayed from December until next October. This is presumably one they hope to get like awards for. I mean, it'll still be able to get awards next year, if not else. They also delayed The French Dispatch. This is Wes Anderson's latest film, which has a massive cast. This one's been unfortunate because it's kind of meant to be released a few times now. It was actually meant to premiere at Cannes, but of course Cannes was postponed. No details about what's going on with Cannes for this year. They've just removed it from the schedule. They haven't given it a new date. Let's be honest. Like that's an ace in the hole. You can throw that out whenever. It'll probably get some awards attention. It'll probably do pretty good. So like they'll release it when they need to, I guess, when they can find like a gap in the calendar. I'm sure that's where that will go. So the big question after that becomes, what exactly are we going to do with the bigger films? Those are kind of the smaller films. Another smaller film they led, by the way, Antlers, the Guillermo del Toro produced horror film. That's been moved to February next year, which had a Comic-Con panel, which we'll talk about Comic-Con a bit briefly later on. So, first of all, those kind of awards films, what's going on with the awards this year? It's, at the moment, been pushed from February to April, the Oscars, that is. And they've also changed some of the eligibility things. Streaming movies that go direct to streaming are now eligible. So it's still up in the air what's going to happen to Oscars, but it's so far away. But of course, they kind of delayed it 2 months. It's been going on for longer than 2 months, so things could really, really change. We'll have to see. It could be kind of a a reduced Oscars, or I don't think they'll get rid of it completely, but I'm sure there'll be some kind of caveats made to make it happen. So French Dispatch isn't the only one that's not got a date. As I mentioned, Mulan has not got a date. Mulan is one of the more interesting cases because it was meant to come out really around the time this whole thing kicked off. It was meant to come out towards the end of March. But of course, it was delayed to the end of August. They were hoping it would be safe by then. And now it's been removed from the calendar altogether. It's interesting because like when it came to this whole COVID thing and the cinemas opening up, two big kind of hopes were Mulan and Tenet. We'll get to Tenet in a minute. There's a lot to talk about with Tenet, as there always is. Mulan was kind of one of the last big hopes. You know, it's a blockbuster. It's hoping to be like saving the summer movie season, giving a reason for cinemas to open up with something big. Now it's just gone altogether. And what you'll notice with a trend of a lot of these release dates is no studio wants to be the first necessarily. They don't want to risk throwing their big budget movie out there as a kind of sacrificial lamb for the rest of the studios. It's not surprising. I mean, Mulan just isn't really, like, it's not a big enough property, I think, that people are going to rush out to see it. And also, releasing in this climate can be a bit of a disaster, as presumably is the case with some of the other films we'll talk about soon. Like, a lot of people are like kind of going Disney Plus. It could, but that's a lot of money to lose, man. That's a lot. Like, something like Hamilton, say. Hamilton cost them $75 million to, you know, buy the rights to. And obviously they're losing money just based on the fact that this could have made a lot more money if it was in cinemas. Now I know they were worried about the international release, which I think they probably botched that. I think they didn't realize that people around the world kind of were excited for Hamilton when it got dropped on Disney Plus. But something like Mulan is like hundreds of millions of dollars. And whatever about the American market, whatever about the international markets, well, definitely see some interest. The Chinese film market, that's a massive one for that. And the Chinese like cinema scene at the moment is a bit all over the place. They've opened, they closed, they're reopening. I think with I think Avatar is being re-released there, and a few other properties that they think will work. I think Harry Potter, maybe. Are they allowed Harry Potter? See, I thought they were allowed Harry Potter, but I'm also sure China has like rules about magic and stuff in films. I don't know. Anyway, we were speaking of Avatar. Can't go, of course, talk about the big movie release dates without talking about Avatar, because Avatar has also been delayed rather significantly, but also it's so far away that it doesn't really matter, that kind of way. So for a while now, we've been hearing that Disney are going to alternate the end of the year slot between Avatar movies and Star Wars. So it would be Avatar 2, Star Wars, Avatar 3, Star Wars, Avatar 4, Star Wars, Avatar 5. I'm so sorry if this is how you found out there's going to be 5 Avatar films. But yeah, that's what's going on with that. They were meant to basically kind of hop back and forth. And so they always have a kind of a winter tentpole with these sci-fi movies. Of course, Avatar has been delayed multiple times. It's no stranger here. I think it actually got delayed like in the last few months, maybe. I think it might maybe the end of last year. It got pushed from the end of 2021 into 2022. So that's when that cycle will kick off now between Avatar and Star Wars. I mean, who cares? Like, by the time Avatar 2 comes out, it'll have been, what, quick math, 13 years since Avatar 1 came out? That's insane. Like, you have the biggest, like, one of the most successful films of all time, and there's 13 years between a sequel is shocking. Like, I put it this way, for context, everyone was like Rocky 5, and then Rocky Balboa was like, wow, Rocky's back. Rocky has returned. It was 3 years less there for Avatar. There's only 3 years more between Rocky 5 and Rocky Balboa than there is between Avatar and Avatar 2. The Na'vi are back. They did it. Empire Strikes Back. No. Return of the Jedi and Phantom Menace is 16 years as well. So there's just another 3 years it has over Avatar. That's such an insane gap. And I know James Cameron's got to like reinvent cinema again. He's like going on about glasses, this 3D, or I don't know what the hell he's doing, man. Anytime you see behind the scenes photos of like the Avatar sequels, I'm like, this could have been taken at any time, and I don't know, is this a good indication of filming or what? It's like a load of actors thrown into like a swimming pool full of ping pong balls, and they're like, that's right, we're using real technology to make them look like they're swimming in water, and you're like, could you Could you just have put them in a pool of water? Would that not have worked? No, because I'm sure they're like all about like a load of the movie's going to take place underwater. I'm really curious to see how that works. Whether or not Avatar is going to be a big success. It, of course, was a massive, massive, massive success in China, as I mentioned. I cannot underestimate how successful Avatar was in China. It basically led to them building more cinemas to cope with demand, and it's really kind of changed the landscape for Hollywood in China. And they love water. That's a weird kind of thing about Chinese movies. Any movie that has a lot of water in it seems to do really well there. Aquaman did really good. That shark movie did really good. The Mermaid was one of their own movies that was amazing. So I don't know. That's a weird theme, I guess. China loves water. Is that racist? Is that a stereotype? I don't know. China loves water. I'm cancelled because I said China loves water. Okay. As I mentioned, though, we were talking a lot about how basically Mulan and Tenet were the kind of linchpins. They were like kind of two big films that were going to push cinemas into being open again, to making, to kind of getting things back on track. They were, basically first. The thing is, once those fell, it was like everyone else got scared about coming next. So because of Mulan leaving, other films started to get delayed. The first one being A Quiet Place Part 2 from Paramount. Not surprising in a lot of ways that this got delayed. It's an R-rated horror film. It's going to be a big success whenever you put it out, unless you put it out during a pandemic. So that's why they're kind of holding off on that. Now, I actually feel really bad for this movie because this movie was like so close. It was so close to coming out when all this kicked off. Like Mulan was close. This was like ridiculous how close it was. Let me see if I have the date here. Yeah, it was meant to come out on March 20th. So like, oh man, it was like, I think cinemas here got closed around like the 13th maybe, or something like that. Like, it was very, very close. I think it was closed, like cinemas here at least closed the week before this came out. And of course they delayed it a little bit before that because of all the concerns. I think originally they looked like it was only going to be delayed like a month or something. It's such a shame for this film. Like, it was so close to coming out and now it's been delayed. It got delayed to this date, September 4th. That's a date that's now occupied by Tenet, which we'll get to. And now it's been delayed until April 23rd of 2021. Ooh, that is it's been delayed over a year. God, that's insane. A lot of films are kind of going to face that reality. The thing about this is, like, it's an R-rated horror film. It's going to do really well. Like, this was so close to release. I just realized they were actually like showing the first one in cinemas again to get people hyped up. Ugh, what a mess. It'll be a big success regardless. I've heard it's a very, very good film. Like, that's how close it was to release. We heard reviews, heard the buzz about it. Apparently very good. Great to see with an audience, apparently. So hopefully we won't have to wait that long until we can see it with an audience. I don't think there's much else to say about it. A Quiet Place Part 2 has been delayed over a year now. It's coming out end of April of 2021. There's honestly like a couple of these films that are kind of stuck with this. Like, with A Quiet Place Part 2, you could possibly, move it down the calendar. But, like, let's be realistic. You move it from September. You have, October and November. Like, maybe you could put them there. Of course, you want to tie into Halloween because it's a horror film. But you also have to realize now that a lot of movies are going to get delayed and a lot of movies are going to be coming for those end-of-year things. And I'm guessing Paramount would rather put, like, a kind of big blockbuster there if they have any. I don't actually think they do. Paramount have had a rough kind of few years. They had a terrible year last year. And because of that, it's like, where do you put this where it will actually make sense? January is generally a graveyard for movies. That might have to change this year. February, you could possibly put there. I think the original one came out in February, but obviously, I think they're worried that a lot of places are going to be kind of jumping the gun and putting films down at some of these dates. And also they want to try kind of lay their stake early. So that's where we're at with Quiet Place Part 2. Not the only sizable delay from Paramount. The other one is Top Gun Maverick. This film was meant to come out in July of this year. July 12th, I'm going to say, I guess. I feel bad for this film as well a little bit because it's like, yeah, it was meant to come out July 12th. They were promoting the hell out of this. Anytime I go to the cinema, it's Top Gun Maverick is the trailer. It's like, and it's actually, God, it's so sad now because it's like, coming to theaters 2020, and at the bottom you see 2019 when the trailer was put out, and you're like, remember when you saw trailers for a movie and they just actually came out? Remember when movies actually existed in cinemas? That was nice, wasn't it? What a quaint time that was, when you could actually see new films. Speaking of going to cinemas, actually, I'll come back to Top Gun in a sec, but like, the most ominous sign I've seen is I went into a cinema and they were literally, no exaggeration, no hyperbole, they were tearing posters down off the wall, spray painting, not using a marker, literally spray painting over coming to cinemas and spray painting over the dates. Dude, that is grim. Because they just have posters now for movies that aren't coming anytime soon. Like, they have posters up for Top Gun, which was meant to come out in July, was meant to come out in December. Now it's been pushed again to July 2nd. So just 10 days short of a year delayed. Now, this is an interesting case because I think this is sort of something that we might see a bit more of. So the original delay makes sense. Obviously, you couldn't open this in July. December, hey, makes sense. Now, obviously, December is going to be very, very competitive this year. There's a lot of big releases in December. I think a lot of stuff is going to get moved from December coming soon. The other problem is that apparently the reason why it was actually moved wasn't because they were like, oh, it's competitive. Who knows what cinemas are going to be like in December. It was because Tom Cruise wouldn't have been available to go around promoting it. Because, of course, his commitments to Mission Impossible can go back to filming now. So because of that, he wouldn't have been available. His first kind of goal and commitment is to Mission Impossible, which is going to be very, very interesting. I think you're going to have a lot of these cases where it's like, hey, we can put this movie out, and people are like, I have to film this movie. Like, for example, another movie that got delayed, Spider-Man 3, Tom Holland, they had to delay that movie. It was originally going to come out the summer, then it got delayed to November. Yeah, it was meant to come out July, then November. Now it's December 17th, 2021. So we have an MCU movie coming out during Christmas, which is kind of cool. I know, MCU, Sony, whatever. But the reason that was kind of the case, seemingly, was also because he has to film Uncharted. That was started filming just as the pandemic kicked off, and now they've had to push back the production schedule. I think you're going to have that with a few things. I think your production schedules are going to be pushed back, which means a lot of films are going to be delayed. Promotional cases like this, like obviously, if you've ever noticed, Tom Cruise, whenever he promotes a movie, he goes all out. He's like in every country in the world, riding motorbikes, drinking beer, chatting up the women, being charming, being the charming Scientologist nutcase that he is. He came to Ireland. I can't even remember what movie it was, and like the whole country was just in love with him for like 3 straight days. Everyone was like, oh. I remember seeing like tweets of people being like, Tom Cruise doesn't normally do it for me, but he looks so good now. And I'm like, it's so weird. We have a weird thing. Like, it happens in other countries, smaller countries, but in Ireland especially, anytime a celebrity comes to us or just acknowledge their existence, we're like, oh, aren't they great? They're amazing. I love them all. Yeah, Tom Cruise obviously does a massive thing. You can't promote Top Gun Maverick without Maverick, clearly. So, because of that, it got delayed. Nearly a year now. By the time it gets released, it'll almost have been a year since Top Gun was meant to take flight. But that's where we're at with Top Gun Maverick. It's interesting. I think we're going to see. I think this is kind of a thing we might see a bit more of with films getting delayed due to promotion commitments, due to filming schedules. We'll have to see more on that as it comes. But as you're talking about delays, we can talk about the most interesting scenario, the one that's consistently been the news. Like, I've been away for months now without doing a podcast. So much of that news would have just been this film and its consistent delays, which is Tenet. What the hell is going on with Tenet, you ask? The test broadcast I did talk about it a little bit. That's on YouTube if you want to check it out. It's an unofficial episode. So let's talk about Tenet. Let's talk about the plan with Tenet, what their release idea was, I guess. Tenet was meant to come out July 17th, I think. Mid-July anyway, certainly. And as it got closer, it became very clear, hey, now is not the time to open a film like this. So what do? Well, you have to delay the film. Now, most of these delays, as you notice, it's like delayed 3 months, delayed, until next year. Like, some very significant delays. Warner Brothers were like, 2 weeks. We're going to delay it 2 weeks. It'll be fine. Coronavirus will pass in 2 weeks. There are people that probably could have got the coronavirus at the date it was meant to come out, and then just have shown symptoms for coronavirus when the film was released on its new date. I don't know if that makes sense from a scientific point of view or from a mathematical perspective, but you know what I'm trying to say. 2 weeks is a very, very small gap. And what's even weirder is this is a strategy Warner Bros. Seem to keep doing, that every 2 weeks they would kick Tenet 2 weeks down the calendar. It was meant to come out mid-July. No, now it's end of July. Gets close to the end of July. And now it's the middle of August. And it seemed like, at least about a week and a half ago, that Warner Bros. Had kind of seen sense that it made sense not to put this film out there now and not to keep kicking it down the road for 2 weeks. Because even from like a marketing perspective, right? You're putting materials out there with wrong dates now. Like, you're giving people a mixed message, and guaranteed, like, a lot of the marketing now and a lot of the talk has been about the date, so there is buzz from that perspective, but you're still confusing the consumer. Like, people still don't know when this movie is out because it still hasn't really been clarified for a lot of people. And the thing is, like, even speaking from a marketing perspective, I watched a UFC event and they were like, Tenet, come to cinemas August 15th or whatever it was. Nope. Those don't come cheap either, man. And if you've got to keep putting out trailers, TV spots, posters with new dates, like, it's a drop in the ocean compared to the rest of the film, but that's going to cost you a lot of money. Generally speaking, a lot of films work on a 90-day marketing window. So something like No Time to Die is actually, they're getting concerned now because it's coming up to the time where they'll have to start promoting this and they need to know if they're going to be able to stick with that date in November. But with Tenet, it's like they're just burning through money for marketing. I don't entirely get what their plan was. And it looked like for a while that they said, hey, you know what? This doesn't make any sense. We removed it from the calendar. They removed it from the calendar. Shortly after Mulan removed itself from the calendar, it looked like the last gasp of the summer box office season was dead. And then Warner Brothers, like 2 or 3 days later, were like, here's what we're going to do. And actually, I want to read this out because this is what they said, and this is what they teased, and we were all meant to be very, very excited. Like, they keep playing this game of chicken with the coronavirus, thinking that it'll just go away. And they basically delayed it, as I said. They removed it from the schedule. And what they said was they pulled it from the schedule and announced an unconventional theatrical rollout. Want to know what that is? It basically means it's opening at the end of August in Europe and international territories. Apparently 70 countries are going to get this at the end of August. Okay. Like, that's, I guess it's unconventional that you're just giving it to us before America. It's not that unconventional. I kind of find it odd that they're pushing it that way. They're really just making it clear, like, hey, we care about American audiences, which is fine. But like, the last Jurassic World movie came out in Europe way earlier. A lot of movies opened a week early in Europe. Marvel movies used to do like a week early in Europe. It's not that unconventional. But the more unconventional part is what they're doing domestically, because apparently come September 4th, it's going to open in select American cities. Of course, that will mean we can open cinemas out here are open. There's low amounts of cases. They can be open there. Yeah, I guess that's okay. I mean, I think I heard something like there's only 25% of cinemas that won't be able to open in going by this plan. But those are massive, massive markets that won't be able to open in. And who even knows? Like, America hasn't really got itself under control. The question really becomes, are they going to have the balls to open this internationally and not open it in America? Because I think they don't want to burn the American consumer, because I've already seen people complain, like, why are we not getting it when Europe are getting it? Ugh. And of course, like, there's been loads of juicy drama surrounding this film. Like, Nolan apparently gets some of the money for it being released. And a lot of people were saying that he was the one pushing because he wanted to save cinemas, which is noble, but also it's like, put people's lives first. It's been a mess. There's no way this can break even in the current state of the world. Like, it's just not possible, in my opinion. But I mean, also, it would have to make a lot of money under normal circumstances. Like, the rumor going around, and I don't know if this is true. I think it's Hollywood accounting. Actually, Hollywood accounting is a different thing, but you know, it's said that it needs to make $800 million to break even. Now, here's why I don't trust that number, because I could come to that number about any film very easily, because generally speaking, high budget film like this, $200 million. Okay? The general rule of thumb is double that for marketing. So we're talking $400 million. Cinemas take 50%, studios take the other 50%. So, what is half? If 400 million is what they need to make to break even, double that to get the half, 800 million. So, like, I could figure it out about any movie. It seems like a very vague rule. I don't know if it's necessarily true. Warner Brothers also sent out a message to reporters being like, stop reporting negative stuff about Tenet, which you're like, why don't you just fucking get your shit together? And they won't. Anyway, that's Tenet. I'm sick of talking about, sick of hearing about it. Just either put it out or don't. So maybe by the end of the month, we'll actually have Tenet to see, here in Europe at least, if not elsewhere. But going from one director of Batman, in Christopher Nolan, to another person who has directed Batman, and that's Zack Snyder, because one of the big stories that broke while we were away was Zack Snyder's Justice League, which broke about 2 months ago. I actually did a test stream on this a while ago. Zack Snyder's Justice League. Or is that what it's called? Who knows? Zack Snyder knows, but he's apparently being very cagey about it. This past weekend, Zack Snyder was at Justice Con. That's right, Comic Con was on, but Zack went to Justice Con, because Justice Con is for the fans, and Zack is about his fans. His fans love him. Zack loves his fans. Very clear that there's a sort of cultish appeal to Zack Snyder nowadays. He left Vero, I guess. Vero is like Zack Snyder's version of Twitter, where seemingly he's the only one that uses it, I think. Might have ties to like the Chinese Communist Party, I don't know. He went to this Justice Con event, which was a fan event, unlicensed by Warner Brothers. It had like, I think the cinematographer of Justice League, it had Cyborg, it had Zack Snyder. So it had some, pretty good gets for them. And of course, a lot of tidbits when they finally got to talk to Zack. As I said, this was announced 2 months ago. And apparently, when it comes to the title, he can't confirm that's the official title. The title of Zack Snyder's Justice League. It's like you announced it as that. He says there's certain legal issues they're trying to work out, but he was also very non-committal. Zack is always very vague in his answers, which is something that his base is loving, because they're able to pick apart things and see them to suit their narrative. He kind of said like he's trying to make it official, but he's not entirely sure. There's some legal issues. He thinks that's what it's going to be, but he's not sure. And it's like, dude, just tell us the name of the movie, or don't. Like, don't give us this nonsense. Zack Snyder's Justice League is something anyone could have come up with. And also, you advertise it as Zack Snyder's Justice League. You like, that was like the big image. If that's not the name, maybe you shouldn't have called it that to begin with. Just like, I don't know. They could have just called it a Snyder Cut. They could have called it like actually Justice League : the Snyder Cut. They did that with Superman 2, the Donner Cut. So there's at least precedence for that. But anyway, we'll probably get an official title very, very soon, along with a few other details that I'll get to in a minute. The final runtime for this is apparently 214 minutes. That's 3 hours, 34 minutes. Oh, Jesus, that's long. That's long. I think that might be the longest comic book movie that I can think of, at least in my head. I'm sure there might be one that gets close. Endgame is 3 hours. Certainly one of the longer comic book movies. Hell, one of the longer big budget films, if nothing else. That's way too much, in my opinion. But it basically sounds like he's just putting everything he's ever filmed together. Maybe a few cuts here and there, and obviously presumably some additional stuff that he'll have to see if he can get done. That to me also very much indicates that this is not going to be a kind of one film release. This is, in my opinion, it's very, very likely this is going to be episodic. It makes sense to recoup your investment, because if you space it out enough, people are going to have to get HBO Max for 2 months as opposed to 1. Also, that's too much for one sitting, in my opinion. But there you go. I think it should also be sort of said that with that kind of runtime, the question is whether there's going to be additional shooting. And he's been very cagey about that. He hasn't said it. Initially, we heard no. And I'd be shocked if they did. Like, that just seems like they're throwing a lot of money. I don't think this is a good investment, necessarily. It's costing a lot of money. And I don't know if there's necessarily a way of returning on that investment. But he's been very cagey about it, so maybe there could be some minor stuff. I don't know. There probably will be additional dialogue recorded, but we'll see. I don't think it's a good idea. More inflammatory is that he talked about the possibility of using some of the footage that Joss Whedon shot. And he said this, I'm going to quote him directly here because I don't want to get this wrong. I'd destroy the movie before I use a single frame that I didn't photograph. That is a fucking hard fact. I'd blow the fucking thing up. Ooh, boy, that is... He came out swinging with that one, didn't he? Look, I don't know what to say for this, because I have such mixed feelings on this Snyder Cut, because like, it's great that, you know, a director is getting to realize his vision, but I wasn't a fan of his vision in some of those other movies. And also, like, someday I'm going to have to talk about this in detail, because I'm not going to do it now. There's loads of news to get to. But this can never be the Snyder Cut in some ways. Like he's now able to do this with the benefit of hindsight. He's able to say, oh, well, they responded well to this. They didn't respond to this, and affected that way. This is like kind of unprecedented, because it's not his traditional cut of the movie. It's done with, you know, kind of fan service elements that he's realized over time that people want to see. It's judging off the reaction of the stuff that didn't work in the theatrical, as much as that was, you know, a Frankenstein version of him and Whedon. But also, Justice League needed to have reshoots, by his own admission. Some of that stuff from Whedon could have been useful. I don't know. Feels like he's kind of put this hill for him to die on here of, I won't use it. This is my movie. This is my cut, which is admirable. I think it might bite him in the ass, though. There might be some stuff that's kind of necessary for like a cohesive story, having a sort of narrative flow to the whole film. I don't know. We'll see. It depends, I suppose, also if he's able to refilm stuff, which this must be a nightmare paperwork-wise, because, like, do you have to pay the actors again? Is it like a separate film? If you do have to pay them again, does that mean you're entitled to get reshoots off them? I don't know. Because I don't know how many reshoots are they, because they've done reshoots once already for this film. Is this a new film? I don't know. It's interesting. I find it very interesting from that side. I'm not necessarily, you know, thinking it's going to be a good film. I was going to say I'm not excited for it, but I kind of am. I want to see how this stacks up. I think regardless, the reaction like from fans, they're going to like, this is amazing, regardless of whether it's good or not. Probably the only kind of official thing we got was a clip of the film, which, I mean, look, there's no way of covering this up. This is a clip we've already seen. You had 2 months, Zach, and you gave us a clip you'd already seen. Well, okay, we'll get into this as well. Ugh, why is every bit of Zack Snyder news have to be so fucking complicated? So, this clip was put out there on the Justice League Blu-ray as a deleted scene. The scene is Superman revived from the dead, comes to talk to Alfred. It was teased in one of the trailers at the end, but you didn't see Superman. You know, Superman walks in and Alfred says something like, he said you might come. I hope you're not too late. Ugh. The only difference here is that he recolored the red and blue suit to black. 2 months. It was also shown as a really weird aspect ratio, and like, I think it was filmed off a screen in his house or something. It's not that hard to recolor stuff like that. I could do that like now. It mightn't be as good, but it wouldn't be much worse. And you had 2 months to do it. And here's the thing as well. First of all, he got really kind of defensive. He was like, they didn't ask my permission to release that scene. They don't need your permission. As much as you're a director, it is their movie, it is their property, it is their money. They own the footage. Okay? I know that sounds like I'm just like sticking up for corporate overlords. No. But that's not how films work, Zach. Okay? Also, remember when this was released, the Snyder Cut seemed like it was never going to happen anyway. And the other thing to mention is that he says that, and I'm not sure if this story, like Zach, I think Zach is full of it at times, okay? And what he said was that he colored the red and blue suit in a certain way that would make it easier to convert it in post, because Warner's apparently didn't want to give him a black suit, didn't want a black suit. Which makes me like, okay, that might be true. But, like, is this just is this a new suit that you made for this scene that you could color black and white? In which case, like, why? Why would you not just make a suit that looked really good in red and blue in general? I think the black suit is just a stupid fan servicing anyway. I don't think it's a big deal to have the black suit in anyway, to be honest. But the other thing is, like, what if Warner Bros. Were like against it because of cost or whatever, which I think is what he seemed to imply. You already have a black suit. You had a black suit in Man of Steel. And if it's just a recolor job, that's more expensive. I don't know. Every time we do Zack Snyder stuff, I just get burnt out. But another thing that burnt me out, because this is incredibly long and boring, and I'm going to try to rush through it because I've actually tried to record this podcast a few times now, and I always lose steam when we get to the Emmys, because who cares about the Emmys, man? Like, the Emmys, right? I'm trying not to be bitter. The Emmys. Emmy nominations were announced. Big news stories out of this were the massive success of Watchmen, which there are 26 nominations, which is insane. And also the amount of nominations the Mandalorian got. Mandalorian got 15 nominations. I kind of feel like the Watchmen one is well deserved. And it's a win for kind of genre television, which is something the Emmys traditionally go away from. Now, the Mandalorian, win for genre television. I don't know if it deserved that many nominations. Like, Mandalorian was fun, but was it like a great show? Yeah, it was pretty good. It was cool to have a good Star Wars show, but I'm not like, this is like narratively amazing. Like, it's hard to put this in the same category as something like Watchmen, for example. Nominations for shows. It was a big year for genre television in general. Stranger Things also got nominated, which is also me going like, what? Like, it was, season 3 was better than season 2, I guess, but like, best drama. So speaking of best drama, we had Better Call Saul, The Crown, Handmaid's Tale, Killing Eve, Mandalorian, Ozark, Stranger Things, and Succession. A lot of great stuff there. Handmaid's Tale apparently bounced back after its previous season, was only okay. Killing Eve, I've heard, is on a downward slope, so that's surprising. And as I said, Stranger Things, Mandalorian, that surprised me. Watchmen is a limited series, that's why Watchmen isn't there. Best comedy series, Curb, Dead to Me, The Good Place, Insecure, Kaminsky Method, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and Schitt's Creek. And finally, What We Do in the Shadows. It's great to see Schitt's Creek. I've never actually watched the show, but I think it's so cool that it kind of was an underdog and it's kind of managed to claw itself into there with big shows, you know. And this is its final season, so it's nice to see it get some recognition there. Good Place last season, you kind of see it a lot where shows in their final season get a bit of love. Not that it did deserve it anyway. I'm so happy for What We Do in the Shadows. That's a weird thing that they wouldn't normally go for. And like, when you come to talking about genre television, that is genre television, even though it's a comedy. But it's so weird that normally it wouldn't go for it. But they apparently loved it. It got nominated for, I think, like 3 of the 6 writing nominations as well for comedy, which is insane. Like 3 of 10 episodes were nominated for an award. Insane. Best actor in a drama series, Jason Bateman, Sterling K. Brown, and This Is Us, Steve Carell in The Morning Show, Brian Cox in Succession, Billy Porter in Pose, and Jeremy Strong in Succession. Succession is like in all of the acting categories. It's very good acting wise, apparently. I still have to watch this show. Sterling K. Brown is also actually nominated for Best Supporting Actor in a Comedy, I think. I don't remember what show it was for, but we'll get to that in a sec. Best Actress in a Drama Series, Jennifer Aniston in The Morning Show, Olivia Colman in The Crown, Jodie Comer in Killing Eve, Laura Linney in Ozark, Sandra Oh in Killing Eve, and Zendaya in Euphoria. The big kind of win there is Zendaya. A lot of them are kind of stalwarts of the genre. Zendaya, like, for her age, to have such talent and to be recognised in a show that the Emmys wouldn't normally look at, a kind of experimental, weird show like Euphoria, is a real win, so congrats to her. Best Supporting Actor in a Drama Series, Giancarlo Esposito in Better Call Saul. That's something I want to mention in a sec. Nicholas Braun in Succession, Kieran Culkin in Succession, Matthew McFadden in Succession, Bradley Whitford, Handmaid's Tale, Billy Crudup, Morning Show, Mark Duplass, The Morning Show, and Jeffrey Wright in Westworld. Again, Succession leading the roost there. Mentioning Giancarlo Esposito in Better Call Saul, that is the sole acting nomination for Better Call Saul this year, which people are shocked at. Bob Odenkirk didn't get nominated. He's been nominated most years. I think there was one year he wasn't. Jonathan Banks is normally in that category as well. He's not nominated. Big one a lot of people are pissed off about is Rhea Seehorn, Kim Wexler from Better Call Saul, was not nominated. I haven't seen this season, but she's very, very good in general. And apparently this season she was at another level altogether. Still didn't get nominated. She's never been nominated for that role as far as I know, which is a shame. Best Supporting Actress in the Drama Series, Laura Dern, Big Little Lies, Meryl Streep, Big Little Lies, Fiona Shaw in Killing Eve, Julia Garner in Ozark, Sarah Snook in Succession. That's a tongue twister. Sarah Snook in Succession. Helena Bonham Carter in The Crown, Samira Wiley, The Handmaid's Tale, and Tandy Newton for Westworld. Another interesting fact, Reese Witherspoon had 3 chances of being nominated for acting in drama. She was in The Morning Show, Big Little Lies, and Little Fires Everywhere. And she struck out with all 3. I think she's won an Emmy as far as I know for producing Big Little Lies, actually, which is odd. I think she really is like, I want to win one for acting, and she's just not getting nominated, which, you know, Better luck next year, I guess. Although some of those are limited series, so I think your chances are probably lesser already. Best actor in a comedy series: Anthony Anderson, Blackish; Don Cheadle in Black Monday; Ted Danson in The Good Place; Michael Douglas in The Kominsky Method; Eugene Levy in Schitt's Creek; and Rami Youssef in Rami. Very, very strong kind of category there. Don Cheadle is a strange one. I haven't seen Black Monday, but I don't know. Sometimes it feels like the Emmys kind of give votes to like the big actors just because they're the big actors. I say that like as if Don Cheadle like is a bigger name than Michael Douglas. I don't know, like Don Cheadle just like, that's right, I'm here, Hollywood. Give me an award. No, that's kind of, I'm sure he's very good. Look, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I don't know why I went after Don Cheadle. That's weird. I just think he's like the other ones have had a lot of success in that role, and I've heard a lot of talk about Don Cheadle and Black Monday. I haven't really heard at all. But there you go. Best actress in a comedy series: Christine Applegate in Dead to Me, Linda Cardellini in Dead to Me, Rachel Brosnahan in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Catherine O'Hara in Schitt's Creek, Issa Rae in Insecure, and Tracy Ellis Ross in Blackish. So a lot of love for Dead to Me. Schitt's Creek is kind of doing a lot of work in the comedy categories as well. Andre Brow in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I'm delighted for that because it's such a deadpan performance that would often not kind of be looked at. Mahershala Ali and Rami, Kenan Thompson in Saturday Night Live, Daniel Levy in Schitt's Creek, which is great. Him and his dad are both nominated. William Jackson Harper in The Good Place, Alan Arkin in The Kominsky Method, Sterling K. Brown in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. As I said, he was nominated in drama as well, and Tony Shalhoub in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Supporting actress in a comedy series: Betty Gilpin in Glow, Yvonne Orji in Insecure, Cecily Strong Saturday Night Live, Katie McKinnon in Saturday Night Live, or Kate McKinnon, not Katie. Annie Murphy in Schitt's Creek, Darcy Carlin in The Good Place, Alex Borstein and Marion Hinkle, both from Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I thought Saturday Night Live had its own category, which is weird. I also think Brad Pitt got nominated for being on Saturday Night Live portraying Dr. Fauci. Apparently someone was like, that's got to be like the least amount of work ever done for an Emmy nomination, but there you go. Best Limited Series: Little Fires Everywhere, Miss America, Unbelievable, Unorthodox, and Watchmen. Watchmen kind of swept all these categories. I'm not going to go through all of them. Best Actor in a Limited Series: Jeremy Irons was nominated. Hugh Jackman was nominated for Bad Education. Paul Mescal for Normal People. Normal People was massive here in Ireland, but I don't know if it got a lot of recognition elsewhere. It's kind of been a sleeper hit elsewhere, but it did get some nominations at the Emmys this year. Mark Ruffalo, I know this much is true. Best Actress in a Limited Series: Kate Blanchett for Miss America, Shira Haas Unorthodox, Regina King in Watchmen, Octavia Spencer in Self-Made, and Kerry Washington Little Fires Everywhere. Supporting Actor in a Limited Series: this one is basically half of it's Watchmen. Yeah, Abdul Mateen, Luke Gossett Jr. for Watchmen are there. The other two are from Hollywood: Jim Parsons, Dylan McDermott. Lovan Adepo from Watchmen was nominated as well, and Titus Burgess, which is such a surprise considering the other things he's in with. He got nominated for Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Kimmy versus the Reverend, which was an interactive special. So that might be the first time someone was nominated for an interactive bit of content. I don't know. Supporting Actors in a Limited Series: then Holland Taylor, Hollywood; Uza Aduba, Miss America; Margot Martindale, Miss America; Tracy Ullman, Miss America. A lot of stuff from Miss America in that category. Gene Smart in Watchmen, and Toni Collette in Unbelievable. The only thing I'm kind of surprised at, but I guess they had to draw the line somewhere, was Tim Blake Nelson didn't get nominated for Watchmen. He was so good in that show as Looking Glass, but I mean, 3 out of 6 of the nominations are for Watchmen in that category, so I suppose they had to draw the line somewhere. Those are the Emmys. They are taking place on September 20th. Not much else to say about them. Quibi got a couple of nominations, that's why everyone's giving it shit for short form content, which it kind of feels like they're cheating a bit there, right? Like, because everything they put out is short form, everything is in like 10 minutes. So I don't know, could you just like be like, hey, next season Better Call Saul, 10-minute chunks, and then it just wins every award? Like, they could be like, hey, it won 7 Emmys, the 7 Emmy winning Better Call Saul in 10-minute chunks. I don't know if that's how it works, but anyway. How about we talk some more boring Hollywood stuff? Because we have had a weird situation since pandemic happened. I think this might just be a case of, you can't get outside your house. We're getting a bit angry, a bit mad at each other. We're saying things we're going to regret. Settle down. We have AMC on one side, Universal on the other. AMC, largest theater chain in America, got really pissed off at Universal because Universal released Trolls World Tour on video on demand, despite it meant to have been a theatrical release. AMC were not happy with this. They were like, that's it. We're boycotting all Universal movies. I think what they expected was, when they said that, all the other theatre chains would be like, yeah, we're with the AMC. You tell them. They weren't. So basically, they were like, we're boycotting Universal movies. We're not showing any Universal movies at a time when you couldn't show any movies at all. So it was kind of always clear this was a very, very temporary thing. It was just them making a stand. But as a result, they've had to kind of publicly make it nice, and they made a deal, which a lot of people are talking about. But basically, the deal is after 17 days of release, that's at least 3 weekends of a theatrical release. So I'll come to an example in a sec, but they will be allowed to put it on Premiere on demand. So what that essentially means is, let's say Fast and Furious, it goes out in AMC cinemas for 3 weekends. After the third weekend, they can say, right, now you can watch it on demand. Premiere on demand, that's very important. Premiere on demand is $20 a purchase or a rental or whatever. I think it's a rental actually, not a purchase. That's a very important distinction. So because of that, they couldn't just say, hey, 17 days are up, and now you can fucking rent it for $5. They can't do that. Has to be Premiere, has to be $20. And as part of that also, they would get, AMC would get a percentage of that cut. They get 20% of it, I think, which is, $4, which is a good deal for them in that regard because they're doing nothing. The other thing, though, is generally speaking, a bigger movie, you're going to want it to get a big theatrical release. You're probably going to stick to general window, which is 90 days. So, is it going to change much? Probably not, as I'll get more into in a sec. Big cinema release, like big blockbuster, they're going to want to keep it in cinemas for as long as possible. There's just more money to be made there. A lot of people are saying this is the death of cinema. This is the death of the traditional model. And it's like, people are saying it's not a good deal for AMC, which it potentially wouldn't be if they fully used that, that move of putting every film on demand after 17 days, but they won't. This is probably most damaging to smaller films, because basically now they get a very short theatrical run and then be dumped on the thing. And because of that, they might be less inclined to make smaller films altogether, quite honestly. Now, of course, we've had some films that have kind of been quite successful in their smaller format. King of Staten Island being one of them, which actually was that Universal release, maybe. I don't know. It seems like people are freaking out about this, but the truth is, it's not a big deal for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's just Universal. Okay, plenty of other studios. It's not applied to anyone else, and it's just AMC. So, in other words, Universal can't go, hey, we're putting out Fast and Furious onto rental after 17 days. Here you go. They can't do that because then Cinemark or Regal, all these other cinema chains will be like, hey, you didn't sign a deal with us, pal. We're not going to show your movie at all if you're going to do that to us, which is what has happened in the past. They actually, it wasn't Universal, I don't think, but the film Tower Heist in 2011, when that was meant to be released, they said in 17 days, certain Comcast subscribers in certain areas will be able to rent the movie at a cost of $60. And cinemas were like, you do that, we're not showing the movie. Simple as. And because of that, they backed down. So this is sort of a non-deal in my opinion. I don't know if much is able to come of it until more studios get more deals. And I know that I think it is it Cinemark, I think, came out and said like this is a horrible deal. I don't know why they agreed to it. AMC are in a lot of debt. I think they just wanted something that would, possibly boost their share price or get a bit more investment and chance of a decent amount of money in short term, certainly. And the other thing of note is that like Disney came out and they were like, we have no intention of negotiating that deal. But then again, Disney mostly put out big movies, so it won't affect them. It's an interesting deal that everyone thinks is the death of cinema and a big deal. I don't think it is. But I do think like at the same time, a discussion of that 90-day theatrical window is long overdue. People aren't prepared to wait 90 days necessarily now. That probably drives piracy. Like something like The Irishman had serious problem with cutting down that theatrical window. 90 days is too long, but 17 days is probably too short. They need to kind of find a deal in the middle. But as long as it's not done all over by all people involved, it won't make a big difference, in my opinion, at least. As I said, it's not the first time it's happened. It happened with Tower Heist. It also happened with Paranormal Activity. I think the final Paranormal Activity movie was meant to come out on demand. I don't know, was it 17 days, but it was certainly not long after. And as a result, a lot of chains in America didn't show it. And because of that, it did not do well domestically. So we'll see how that goes. We'll keep an eye on it. I don't know if it's going to lead to much. I'm not sure whether there'll be much development beyond that. I don't think the deal necessarily is going to even be used, to be honest. I think it's very likely that we'll probably just carry on business as normal with the regular theatrical model. Anyway, that's our news. We have a few trailers we want to talk about, so let's get to our trailer trash.
This is the theme for trailer.
This is the theme for trailer trash. Get in the bin.
Get in the bin.
Trailer trash. So there's been a few trailers out this week that I kind of want to talk about. I'm not going to say much about some of them, to be honest, because I don't have a lot to say. But we had first the trailer for Kilroy Was Here. This is a Kevin Smith joint. You get it? Because he's basically ruined his career by smoking too much weed. Oh, I made myself sad. No, he's continually stayed productive, and this is one of those examples of him trying something a little bit new. So this is a horror film. It's a horror anthology film. Originally, like this, I've been hearing about this for a long, long time. In fact, I used to listen to the podcast this kind of was spawned off from. Like a lot of his films lately have spawned from podcasts. Tusk and Yoga Hosers both came from podcasts, and so did this. And it was meant to be a Krampus film. And believe it or not, it goes as far back as that. And when the other Krampus film they came out, they were like, feck, what do we do with it? And it's kind of, as a result, changed into a horror anthology. And if you don't know, Kilroy Was Here, it's kind of I guess you could call it a famous bit of graffiti, a famous kind of tag, where basically it's like a wall. You kind of see it in the intro of Community and a few other things. It's like a wall and a guy's nose and face is coming over like that. That's Kilroy. So this is kind of a fictional origin for him. Horror film, as I mentioned. Kevin has done a few horror films now. He's done Tusk, Red State. I enjoyed Red State. I thought Tusk was interesting, at least and different. So I enjoy seeing him do different things. But this doesn't look great. It looks very kind of low budget, which, I mean, he kind of basically said, yeah, it was really low budget. I don't know if that makes it necessarily any better. It looks fine. I like when he experiments with new genres instead of just kind of going back to the nostalgia well, as he often does. So I'm interested to see how it goes from that regard. But overall, this trailer didn't really do anything for me at all, to be honest. I kind of forgot about it pretty much straight away, just seeing it. It's fine. It looks like kind of a cheap kind of horror film. I would say some of the effects in there are quite good. Some of the makeup and that stuff doesn't look too bad. It's been a while since it's been a while since it was meant to kind of come out. It's been all over the place. When will it be released? He said 2021, possibly end of 2020. It was fine. It didn't do much for me, to be honest. But it's nice to see him still making films, and it's nice to see him at least kind of extend his wings and do something a bit different. There's not really anyone of note in it. His daughter, Harley Quinn Smith, is in it. Chris Jericho is in it, in a small role. He's kind of popped up in a lot of his films now. It looked fine. It didn't really give me strong feelings one way or the other. But sure, I'm up for a Kevin Smith horror film. I'm happy to see him still making movies, and I hope as long as he does that, he does things that are a little bit different, which isn't the case, because during his Comic-Con panel, he teased Mallrats again. Mallrats 2. Twilight of the Mallrats, I think it's called. Do you want to talk about Comic-Con now? So, Comic-Con at home. Comic-Con has had sort of a slow decline anyway. Lately, it's sort of, some of the big places are saying we can do our own thing. Like Disney is one of the big ones. It's kind of interesting because Comic-Con and E3 are kind of, peas in a pod, and E3 is probably getting less relevant than Comic-Con is. So it's one, I kind of wonder if that's where we're going to see Comic-Con going forward, because like DC are doing their own event this time with DC Fandom. I wonder if they will continue to do that the same way Marvel does their things. And we also have D23 when Disney do it every second year, I think. And we have Star Wars Expo as well. So it's like, I wonder what Comic-Con is going to be. And at the end of the day, a lot of studios have kind of said, I don't know, is there necessarily a big appeal of going to Comic-Con? Because a lot of films that have done amazing at Comic-Con have bombed at the box office, and it's expensive to go to Comic-Con, man. It's expensive to set up that promotional tactic. Comic-Con at home was basically a bit of a disaster. I think they were saying that, generally speaking, videos from Comic-Con at home averaged about 15,000 views, which is not good at all. Like, there was, but it wasn't helped by the fact that there wasn't really any big panels. The biggest panel was probably New Mutants, which was fine. I didn't watch the whole panel. It seemed like fun, but also you're taking the fans out of something that its big appeal is that fans can go attend it, and that fans are kind of a part of it, and they don't really have any involvement in it now. So, yeah, it's kind of funny actually, because Comic-Con at home was probably closer to what Comic-Con should have been, in that it was more focused on comics, which is the whole point of the thing, but it just didn't work. It got on him for trying. I'm sure there'll be some elements of it that stay around, but it didn't really work. It doesn't help as well that a lot of the stuff that was promoted, it's like, you know, like a lot of TV shows. Like I never got the point of the TV show Comic-Con panels anyway. Generally speaking, like they were like, do you like our show? Yeah. Well, what's coming up next season? Oh, more of the stuff you like. Yay! Aside from the odd guest star, it was pretty boring or uninteresting. I found most of the TV panels to be that way in general. But also, like a lot of the stuff now, it's like, hey, if it's not already filmed, it mightn't have a release date. Like Antlers had a panel. Antlers are now not coming out till February, so it's ages away. Other things, it's like, hey, when is this coming out? I don't know, but get excited. TV shows, it's like, hey, what's going on with your new season? I was like, I don't know, we can't film it yet. So things were kind of a bit all over the place. But we were speaking about New Mutants. New Mutants also had a Comic-Con panel, which we got a new trailer for. A very short trailer. I mean, what trailer is this for New Mutants now? It must be like its 5th or 6th trailer. Is that right? I can't believe I'm going to say this, man. It's been a running joke. I think from the very first episode, I was ragging on New Mutants. I was like, this is never going to be released. We've been hearing about it forever. New Mutants, more like old mutants. Har, 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 har. They even made a joke about it at their panel, where they were like, meant to come out this date, / new this date, / / I can't believe I'm going to say it, man. I'm looking forward to New Mutants. It looks good. This trailer is really, really good. I kind of would be okay with having not seen it, to be honest, because there's a lot of stuff where I'm like, oh, you know, this kind of might give away a bit much. I don't think it gives away too much, but like the effects of it look pretty good. It looks different to other stuff. I can't believe I'm saying this. This must be Stockholm Syndrome, because they basically held us captive about when this movie was going to be released. But I'm looking forward to New Mutants. It actually looks pretty damn good. Like, look at what's going on behind me if you're watching the video. Like, it's full of action, weird supernatural stuff. It looks dark. The effects for it look damn good, man. I don't know. I'm really surprised how much I enjoyed this trailer, and by extension, how much I'm looking forward to New Mutants. I have to kind of eat my words about the movie. Like, it's shocking. It just feels like, I don't know. Is it just because there's nothing going on? It's because there's not a lot of big movies, and it's kind of almost quaint to have a superhero film that's not tied into a big universe anymore, really. And that is actually going to be released. It's become an underdog. I'm like, come on, New Mutants, you can get released. They were so cheeky about it as well that I found that kind of admirable. Like, they actually put out a teaser before they did Comic-Con, and it said, nothing will stop the New Mutants. And I was like, fair enough. You're like, it's so funny that, like, for ages they're like, we can't release it. And now they're like, we're going to release it at the worst possible time to release a movie. But at the same time, this is a time to, like, if there's a movie that can be a canary in a gold mine. I know you said a gold mine. A coal mine. Canary in a gold mine, man. That'd be a good name for like an album or something. I wonder, is that a phrase? That's a phrase that should be used. Canary in a gold mine. If there is a time to release a movie that can flop and test cinemas at the same time, surely it's New Mutants. But I don't know. Apparently it's coming out at the end of August, I think. Or maybe it's September now. I don't know. They moved the date around so much, I have no idea, to be honest. I'll just check it up there. Now, I say this, there was also a rumor going around Twitter that internationally, at least, it was going to be delayed. So I don't know, hardly, because they removed the date, August 28th. I was right, or was it off by a day or whatever? They removed the date and international promos for it, so I don't know. The whole big thing is about whether or not it can be released on streaming. It cannot. Apparently, it's contractually written in that the film has to be released theatrically, so that kind of explains a lot of it. But you know what, man? I'm looking forward to New Mutants. I'm as shocked as you were that New Mutants looks kind of good and that I'm actually looking forward to it. Speaking of going on demand, we got a trailer for Bill and Ted Face the Music, the third entry in the series. Old Billy and Teddled. I was going to say Teddles, and then I kind of hesitated, so I got Teddled. Bill and Ted Face the Music, the long and waited return of the Wild Stallions as they basically travel through time. I've seen the first Bill and Ted recently. I have to watch the second one. I'm kind of surprised at how polished this looks. I kind of expected it to be a lot more budget, but the effects in it look fantastic. Like, I have Alex Winter, of course, and Keanu Reeves are returning. Samara Weaving is in it, which I had no idea. I think she's like the daughter of Bill and Ted. Kristen Shaw we see there in the trailer behind me. Yeah, it actually looks really good, but I also sort of feel like I wish I hadn't seen the trailer, because it's like it feels like it gives away a lot. Like it's a lot of the scenes, a lot of people in it, a lot of the kind of big moments. But I guess now they kind of have to do that because they need to get people excited, because this is a very interesting release strategy. It's coming to cinemas, select cinemas, but it's also going up on demand at the same time. Like, this is sort of that movie you can experiment with a little bit. But yeah, not much to say about it. I didn't watch the Comic-Con panel for it. I didn't really watch any Comic-Con panels this year, to be honest. But the trailer for it looks fantastic. It's coming, it's on demand. I kind of think it looks pretty good. I do wonder if the Bill and Ted humor kind of holds up to this, age. Like, they were kind of a parody of those like 80s kids, and does that still work? I don't know. Bill and Ted's daughters basically seem to be just Bill and Ted. William Sadler is back as Death, I think it is. He's behind me there in the video. He hasn't aged at all, but I guess that's just good makeup. I'm looking forward to this. I can't say I'm like, oh, I can't wait for Bill and Ted or whatever, but it looks pretty good. I'll certainly see it when it comes out. I have to watch the second one again, because last time I saw it was a long, long time ago. But yeah, that's the trailers. Nothing major. Again, trailers are kind of hitting a snag because we don't know when movies are going to be released, etc. So that's trailer trash. And with that, we go on to the one that I watch, because there's a lot of stuff I've had the time to watch because there's nothing else to do. The one that I watch.
You're the one that I watch.
Yeah, one that I watch. We've been in interesting moments at the moment because, of course, there's not really many new releases to watch. And cinemas are open here in Ireland where I am. So because of that, there's actually been movies that are coming to cinemas that are kind of classics that I kind of got to see on the big screen. That I'm going to talk about a few of them. The first one I want to talk about, I talked about Batman Begins in the test broadcast on YouTube. I want to talk about The Dark Knight. I don't think I need to say much. Obviously, Dark Knight is a classic. It's kind of a great, great film that everyone loves. I want to say first, when I talked about Batman Begins, I didn't say a lot about it. I just kind of said, hey, everyone loves it. It's great, because it is. If I had to make a few complaints about it, like if I had to, one of the things I don't really like is like the fight scenes. Like Batman, first of all, the Batman fighting style in the Nolan movies is a little bit weird, because like they're like, oh, we blend all these martial arts, and then you watch it and he's just constantly fighting everyone with his elbows. He's just elbowing everybody somehow. But also the problem was that it was shot like super zoomed in. Like you could barely tell what's going on in some of the fight scenes, and I kind of feel like they remedied that in The Dark Knight. I mean, the other thing that kind of annoyed me, and I never mentioned this, was like Scarecrow. Like, you don't get to see him like at his best. He's like at his most like intimidating. It's like he's finally at his worst. Oh my god! And he just gets taken out with his taser, and that's it. That kind of annoyed me. Anyway, Dark Knight. I said when I reviewed Batman Begins, I actually think I prefer Batman Begins to Dark Knight, because it kind of felt more like a Batman movie, and over time, Batman Begins has gone up in my estimation, and Dark Knight has gone down. I hadn't seen The Dark Knight now in a long time, a couple of years at least, and I don't think I could. It's hard to convey to someone who doesn't remember living through it or didn't live through how big this movie was. This was like, I honestly can't even imagine another movie that was as big as it. I don't think the Avengers movies got up to it. Maybe Force Awakens, possibly, but maybe not even. Everyone was talking about this movie. Everyone was going crazy for this film when it came out. Like, possibly as well, you know, you have to add in the fact that, you know, the death of Heath Ledger led to that. But it was like, it was a massive, massive movie. Everyone was talking about it. Everyone saw people that you're like, you would watch a Batman movie, went to see it. And you're like, it was a juggernaut. And because of that, at times I kind of feel like some people kind of overlook some of the flaws with it. I think it's too long in some ways. Like, I know that you have to have the Harvey Dent stuff in there because the whole kind of point of the narrative is that Joker is kind of showing that, you know, good people can be corrupted, and you have like the good and the bad dichotomy between Bruce and Harvey Dent, the kind of White Knight and the Dark Knight. And yeah, it does kind of feel a bit tacked on, but it does feel like the film runs a little bit long. It's about 2.5 hours. It's not a major problem. What can I say about this film? I mean, look, Heath Ledger as the Joker is an amazing performance. Like, he really redefined the Joker for that generation. But at the same time, it's that kind of thing now where it's been, you've seen that performance done to death, you've seen that character and that like portrayal done to death, that I'm sort of sick of it. I don't know, it's just me. Like, it kind of felt like, you know, like people that were like had Tyler Durden posters and they were like, yeah, and they were going on with Fight Club, and it's like, yeah, and then you had people that were like, I remember people like just walking around going like, why so serious? And you're like, oh, I get it, dude, I get it. So it felt like it led to an explosion of popularity for the Joker to such a degree that now I'm kind of like, all right, it's an amazing performance. I can't say anything more about it, but I'm kind of sick of seeing it, to be honest. I guess that's my own fault. One thing he does do that really bugs me though, and this is probably more than on a podcast, but he keeps kind of going like, and I don't know why, you can like hear it in the audio. I feel like they could have just taken it out, but like half the time he talks, he just goes, you can hear his lips smacking. Was that an artist? Was that like an actor's choice? Was Nolan like, yeah, leave that in, it'll really annoy people? It's just, I don't know why. It's just a minor thing that annoys me. A few of the other things, I say that knowing that there's probably really annoying sounds throughout this podcast that you're like, oh, it just fucking smacked his lips again. What was that weird mouth noise he just made? Oh. I'm also sitting on a chair that sounds like it's making fart noises. And of course now I can't get it to do it awkward. A few other things, right? And this is a kind of a Nolan problem as well, that I always feel this is the problem. Like, first of all, I don't think Nolan writes very strong female characters. We have the Rachel Dawes character, who this one is portrayed by Maggie Gyllenhaal. I'm on about the farting chair again. I got my foot up on it this time. So if you hear any sliding. Why am I talking about a farting chair? Rachel Dawes, she was played by Katie Holmes in this one. She's replaced by Maggie Gyllenhaal. I think Katie Holmes went off to make a film called Mad Mad Money. Dude, what a terrible choice. Fire your agent, man. So it's a character that is just I'm love interest. Hey, she doesn't really like. I actually felt her characterization was better in the first film, but this one she basically just plays second fiddle to Harvey Dent. They basically just have her there to kill her, more or less. She's fine. Grand performance from Maggie Gyllenhaal. She's probably a better actor than Katie Holmes, but she doesn't really have a lot to do with the role. But another problem, and this is such a minor thing, and I think this is the thing. This is like, look, this is an amazing film. This is a fantastic movie. Probably one of the best comic book films of all time. One of the best blockbusters in recent memory. I mean, if you can call it recent anymore, 12 years. This is the thing. I've seen it so many times that I can only nitpick it now. That's the thing. So that's what this is. Don't take me to say this film is bad. I love it. Nolan has a weird thing, right? And he's done it in other films. It's more glaring in this one. Is giving like extras lines and cutting to them for reactions. It never really worked for me. I don't get it. Like, there's one that I'm also like, always like, why is that in the film? where he like they're arresting all the mobsters, and a cop is just like, "Have a nice trip. See you next fall." I'm like, what is that? Was that meant to get a laugh? Was it just like this scene is suicide and someone needs to say something? It's awful. And one of the more glaring times of this is there's a moment where Harvey Dent is pretending to be Batman, and they have him in the back of an armored truck, and they keep cutting to the guy in the truck for dialogue, and I don't know why. And all of the dialogue is like action cliches. I don't know what the direction was here, where they just like say something, say an action line that you think of, because he's just like, "Oh, this is not good. Oh man, oh." It's like all these stupid action cliche lines. I don't get it at all. I don't know what the point was. I don't know, was it just like, it kind of kills the scene a bit for me. It kind of breaks it. Like it doesn't make me feel like, oh god, these people are in danger. It just makes me go like, action move. Oh, we have to cut back to this asshole in the truck being like, "Oh, that's not good. He's going to need a bigger thing than that. Not good. This is not what I had planned." You're like, oh, it's like, why are you showing us this? Who is this guy? I think unless they were like, they wanted to cut to Harvey Dent, but they were like, oh, he's just like, he wouldn't know what's going on because he can't see. I don't know. And they just settled for that. You also kind of have it in the boat scene a little bit where there's like two fairies. That scene kind of actually annoys me as well when I was watching it. Like, because again, you only nitpick it now. You've seen it so many times. Like, first of all, it's like it's those extras again where they're just like, and it's funny because like Sam Raimi does it in the Spider-Man films, but he does it like, and they're so cheesy, it's kind of funny. Where in this one, it just kind of clashes with the rest of the movie. In my opinion, it's like, it'll cut to like stern business guy and he's like, "You should kill them, I'll twist them." And then it'll cut to one and they're like, "They had their chance." And then it'll cut to another person who'll be like, "Oh, this is blow them up." Blah. There's another reason actually. This is the scene where the extras kind of first popped out to me. There's a scene where like Harvey reveals in a press conference that he's Batman, and before that, it's really funny because it kind of feels like they just gave random extras lines and they got decreasingly less interesting. So it starts with being like a real like strong moral argument where it's like the Batman should reveal himself instead of putting the people of Gotham at risk. Yeah. And one guy is like, "No more dead cops," and everyone's like, "Yeah." And then the get guys that's just like, it's like it gets so stupid where he's just like, "Batman." Everyone's like, "Yeah." It's like they just got lazy and couldn't be bothered writing a load of lines, but they needed the audience to say something. So that ferry scene is weird. You have like a load of prisoners on one ferry, which I kind of like. Also, like, I'm kind of surprised you put prisoners on a ferry instead of like actual citizens in the second one. But anyway, I know they're like, oh, it's dense prize, collection or whatever. And there's a bomb on each boat. And I feel like Nolan does this a lot. Like, Nolan is a smart filmmaker, he's an intellectual filmmaker, but he knows it. And I think sometimes he just tries to rub your nose in how clever he is. Like, he basically sets up a little philosophy experiment of two ferries. They each have detonator to the other boat. If they don't blow up the other boat, he'll blow up both of them. It's like, it just feels so wanky. Like, it goes on for so long. And it feels like he's just like, "Yeah, that's right. Look at this experiment, this social experiment. What am I trying to say here? It's like a modern day trolley problem." Oh, it's like, dude, just get on with the movie. Like, we know they're not going to blow up, because that would look pretty bad for Batman if they both just blew up. And they really hit the nail on the head like multiple times. Like, do you get it? Do you get the idea? Batman's like, "They just showed you." Oh, the Batman voice in this movie. Oh god, I'll get to that in a sec. He's like, "Well, they showed you that people can be good. Not everyone is as bad as you." And it's like, yeah, he sort of did. But there was also a scene where a guy tried to shoot an innocent person. So, maybe not. That scene, I'm kind of sick of that scene by now. And they also hold a vote. Like, who was like, "I've got all this paper, and then we have to count all the votes." Like, time there would have nearly been up. They had like 700 people on the votes or whatever. Anyway, that's The Dark Knight. I'm not sure what else I can say about it. Aaron Eckhart is great. It's Two-Face. The Batman voice is way more noticeable and way more annoying. This one, The Batman Begins, in my opinion, it gets even worse than The Dark Knight Rises from memory. There's some great action scenes in it. I love that you can kind of really tell the practical stuff in this film, and it really, really works. Like the Batpod and the truck scene are fantastic, even though it has the annoying guy in the truck. Yeah, a great film. I don't know what else I can add to it, really. I really do wonder, and this is something I'll get into when I talk about The Dark Knight Rises. I really wonder what the next entry of this would have been like if Heath Ledger hadn't died. I don't think you keep the Joker alive even accidentally, unless you had plans for him. Now, I know the plan was that obviously the plot was you can't kill Batman. That's their one rule. And if you kill me, obviously that would be Joker proven right. But I mean, he killed Harvey then by accident. So, Anyway, that is Dark Knight. Another film I saw the whole Lord of the Rings trilogy in cinemas. Extended Lord of the Rings trilogy. Wow. It was a long one, folks. I saw one Friday, one Saturday, one Sunday. Because that was the way the cinemas kind of paced it out. And Jesus Christ, they're long movies, aren't they? I also kind of weird, right? In some cases, I've only ever seen the extended ones. And I generally go for the extended ones over the theatrical versions. Because I just think the extended ones are kind of better. The first film, man, is so damn good. I can't think of a film that defines like instant classic more than the Lord of the Rings movies. They're like, as soon as they were released, they were like, this is big. This is a big deal. This is going to be something you talk about for a long, long time. And it's going to be something you show to generations and generations of people. And I mean, that first film especially. And it's weird because at the time, like when I was younger, I was like, Return of the King, that's the best one. Oh. And now I look at like the Fellowship of the Ring and I'm like, that's, in my opinion, far and away the best one. It's like, it feels like it takes time to kind of set up the smaller moments. It's not like necessarily a lot of action. It's just such a well done film, and you can kind of see even like the more practical side of the effects. Whereas I think in later ones there's some awkward visual effects that just don't work. It's so quaint in many ways, but it really works. And I think even in the extended one, I watch it and I'm like, since I haven't seen the theatrical one, like I kind of play editor in my head where I'm like, would that scene need to be there? Would that scene have been cut in the theatrical cut? And with the extended first film, very hard to do that. I think like it's generally speaking pretty tight as far as the film goes. What I also love about this series of films is the casting. Like, it's really impressive to me. It feels like the casting, like with a lot of blockbusters and a lot of franchises and series like this, it feels like they're like, we need big names. No one in this really is a massive name. It feels like they went for who suited the role more than, the big name get. And I mean, everyone in this film is fantastic. Like, you can't really say a bad word about any of them. Maybe Orlando Bloom as Legolas at times can be a bit wooden, but that's kind of elves anyway. And I think you probably need a pretty face more than a great performance for Legolas and for that role. But he does a good job in some of the later entries anyway. What can I say about the first film? I think it's like perfect, really. One of the things I actually, when I was younger, and I guess this is just something that, with youth, you look at it one way, and over time, you see it better. Like at the time, I remember being like, oh, Boromir, he's just a traitor. Oh, I hate him. But what I realize and recognize more and more and respect going back is that it really does a better job than I realized at portraying how corrupted he is and turning on them and basically showing that he's not just a bad guy. He's not, like, it's not his fault necessarily. And I think it does a lot better job of that than I appreciated at the time. We also get Gandalf the Grey in this one, who, of course, he's killed by the Balrog coming into the last act. Ian McKellen is really, really great in these films. And what I really love is you can definitely see such a different performance between Gandalf the Grey and Gandalf the White. It's a very noticeable, different performance, which I think is fantastic. Other thing I want to shout out, I mean, the music. God, the music in these films, man, is so fantastic. Howard Shore's score. I think I have the soundtrack albums upstairs. Like, just such an excellent job. Like, so much iconic music just throughout the whole thing. Excellent. I love the look of the film as well. The cinematography is obviously fantastic. I kind of actually, I was just talking about how Nola wasn't good with female films, and this isn't a problem with Peter Jackson's direction, not at all. It's actually something to do with Tolkien. There's not a lot of roles for women in Tolkien's Middle Earth. It kind of changes over time as we get into later entries, which we'll talk about in a sec. I've actually heard it's, I think Arwen, is it? Is like saves Frodo, and that was a change from the book, which I think is excellent. Originally, it was just like a kind of a nameless character. But yeah, first film is excellent. Then we get on to The Two Towers. This is my least favorite of all of them. I think it's fine. It's it's not anywhere near the level of the other ones, in my opinion. And also, it's also that film where, like as I said, I've only seen the extended ones of some of these films where I'm trying to point out, like, you could cut this, you could cut this. I can do that a lot more with this film. Like, where I'm like, that one could have stayed there. This is long. Probably could have cut this bit out. Blah, 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 blah. It's not a bad film. It's still a very, very good film, but it's just not on the level of the other two. Like, there's just some weird things in it where I'm like, oh, why is that in it? Like, first of all, I don't get why they set up a romance with is it Eowyn? I think what's her name? Miranda Otto is the actress's name, I think. Eowyn and Aragorn, and they kind of teased it, but I don't know why. Like, it doesn't lead anywhere, and you've done so much work setting up Arwen and Aragorn. Why are we meant to care now about, like, are we trying to set up a love triangle, and then you're like, nah, let's not bother? And it's only a one-way love triangle. Like, she loves Aragorn, and are we just meant to go, oh, Aragorn's so dreamy, look, all the girls want Aragorn. What? Like, why you bother setting it up at all? I don't get it. It's such a weird inclusion, in my opinion. We have the wargs in this as well. We have a scene where he's dragged over a cliff and he's like dead. I don't get why they put that in the movie at all. I'm like, because like it doesn't serve any good purpose. It just, he's dead and he's not dead then like 20 minutes later. It doesn't lead to anything. It's like, I don't know what the point of that is. It's so obvious he's not dead, like in the context of the film, and it doesn't really lead to anything. So I don't know what the point of that was, personally. We have also, actually, this is something I want to go back to the first one. I still don't fully understand why the Fellowship of the Ring were like, yeah, let Frodo go by himself. I don't get that. Like, why? I know they're like, this is something he has to do himself, or we can't trust you. We could be corrupted. It's just like, just seems so arbitrary. They're just like, yeah, go on. If he hadn't got Sam, he probably would have been dead, to be honest. In fact, he definitely would have been dead. But even with Sam, like, I don't understand why you could have just, maybe ditched some of the people. But, like, I don't know. It just seems like such a weird decision. But I guess that's the way it is in the books anyway. So, because of that, anyway, everyone is kind of split up. Which is weird because, like, the Fellowship of the Ring, like, they make such a big deal of it. And then, like, it lasts for, like, an hour in the first film. And then they're all split up. And they're not even protecting the ring anymore. So, the way they're split up, we have Sam and Frodo. And of course, we have, Smeagol or Gollum. That wasn't great, but I had to at least do an impression. Try doing an impression. I think it's law. Like, there was a stage where after this film, everyone was doing Gollums. It was everywhere. I'm sick of it. The visual effects of Gollum actually still hold up pretty well. I think with the second one, probably a bit less so. Third one, it's still very, very strong. There are moments where it doesn't fully blend with the background. I think that might just be a case of, we're more used to spotting this stuff now. It's kind of one of my problems with the third one. Like the kind of the divide between Sam and Frodo, and kind of Smeagol kind of creating that divide. That never really worked for me, to be honest. It just seems very random. I don't know why it works really, and it doesn't feel entirely necessary. But there you go. It just feels like they need to add a bit more drama to that story, so that's what they did. Although this film does have my favorite line reading ever, when when Sam is cooking and he goes, potatoes, boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. Perfect. As an Irishman, good, well done, Sam. That's what we want to hear. Supporting potatoes, potatoes. What else do we have? We have Merry and Pippin. I don't get their story in this either. Like they're just in the forest and they're sitting on a tree. So sitting on Treebeard for like the whole film. It's so I at the time I remember when I was watching it as a kid, I kind of thought it was kind of interesting. I was like, oh, Treebeard is cool. Now I watch it, I'm like, this is so boring. Treebeard segments. Anytime I went back to that, I'm like, oh, get on with it. Like it's just it's so slow. It brings the film to such a halt. In my opinion. I don't know. They're just like, I will just throw in this like environmental message out of nowhere. But anyway, the Fellowship scenes are pretty good. We get kind of the Grim Worm tongue thing, corrupting the King Theomir, is it? Yeah, it's fine. I find like With this one, it felt like the first one, it kind of sets up the whole world and does an excellent job. The second one, it kind of feels like sets up a lot of stuff for the third one. And because of that, it finds it harder to just kind of stand on its own two legs. It still does. Still a very good movie. Just I think the third one is far and away better, and I think the first one is better than both of them. So it's the weakest one in my opinion, but it works. Of course, the Battle of Helm's Deep, couldn't move on when I talk about that, which is still amazing. Like the sheer scale of that is just like awe-inspiring. It's insane that they could make something that big. It feels like they've never really done something on that scale maybe in any movie again. I mean, Game of Thrones probably came close, but even still, it was nothing on this, in my opinion. Just looks fantastic. Even just like making all those helmets, putting all that makeup on, doing all those swords, I'm just like, Jesus Christ. One of the things I say as well over the course of these films, and I'm obviously they were shot over a long, long, long time, and a lot of pre-production and that kind of thing. I think they were more or less kind of shot in sequence, more or less. Like there is obviously differences between that, but generally speaking, it kind of feels like it was like shot, over time. And I think you can kind of see that in Peter Jackson. I think you can see him actually kind of improve as a filmmaker, in my opinion. Like, and it goes back to actually funny. I made the same complaint about Batman Begins, but some of the battle scenes in the first film, they're shot like a bit too close up. They're like a bit, you can't really necessarily tell what's going on at times. They're super close up or at weird angles, and as it goes on, they're kind of a bit more legible, a bit more exciting as a result. You want to see the whole action, the whole depth of it. So yeah, the second Lord of the Rings, good, not as good as what would follow, and not as good as what preceded it. Of course, final one, Return of the King. I mean, a fantastic film. This was kind of one of those another film that was massive when it came out. The amount of awards it got, it was a massive thing to get that recognition from the Academy, and it's good. I think it's like, again, I don't fully understand the divide they create between Sam and Frodo. I feel like that's just drama nonsense that they had to put in, and there's other things in it that I'm like, there's a few things, right? So Faramir we have is introduced in the second one. They do a really good job setting up Faramir, actually. That's something I also appreciated looking back. Faramir, Boromir's brother, who's basically like kind of overlooked by his dad, underappreciated by his dad. What's his dad's name? I have friends who are massive Lord of the Rings. Denethor. There we go. Who are just going to be like, oh, you don't know. I'm going after another much loved series in a sec, so don't worry. I don't like. It's so odd. There's a scene where like Faramir is thought to be dead. Okay, but I don't understand why. I'm going to get them mixed up, Merry and Pippin. I think it's Merry. I don't understand why Merry is the only one who's like, he's alive! And I don't know why he believes that. No one checks it. Everyone's just like, yeah, he's dead. He's dead. For ages, I don't know why Merry's the only one that recognizes him as alive. I don't get that. And there's even a scene at one point where like he's pouring oil on him to light him on fire, and his head moves. I'm guessing maybe he thought the oil moved his head. So I was like, when I was watching this, I'm like, oh, is he just killing his son? Like he knows he's alive and he's killing him. But then as soon as he shows life, he kind of is like, oh, I shouldn't kill him because he is alive. I just find it very odd. And what's weird is that like we have that moment, like something in this film, and it's in these scenes in Minas Tirith, I think it is. Especially, we have so many like death fake outs. I don't get that. We have Faramir. Where we're like, oh, I guess, is he dead? Oh, I assume, obviously he's not dead. And then we have Eowyn, who is like, I don't even understand the point of her doing a fake death. They act like she's dead for all of about 30 seconds for no real reason. And then I guess Faramir and Eowyn bond after that because of their shared experience of everyone thinking they were dead very, very briefly. This just reminded me of another thing. Actually, this is from the Two Towers. And this is such another drama thing they threw in, and I don't know why, and it didn't really pay off at all. Was like, there's a moment where they're setting up for the Battle of Helm's Deep, and it's Legolas and Aragorn, and they just speak in Elvish, and he's like, they're all going to die, and he's like, they'll die, but the night will die beside them, and they have a falling out, and you're like, oh, is this going to lead to anything? Nope. like a minute later, Legolas is like, I'm sorry. And he's like, it's cool, bro. What was that about? Like, I know they're trying to show the tensions are high and they want to make it clear that this is an unwinnable battle, but that was pretty clear already. Like, why even bother putting that fallout, like, scene in? I don't know. There's some stuff it just feels like didn't pay off at times in this. What else do we have? What's Pippin doing in this film? Oh, yeah, he's on. Oh, yeah. One of them is in Minas Tirith, the other one's fighting with Eowyn. And then they kind of course, both get reunited by the end of it. The whole story with Eowyn, I like it. I like the fact that, of course, you know, she's like the one woman fighting, but I don't know, just the way it's presented, they do a really weird job of it. Like, they're like, oh, you're not going to fight, and they kind of make it sound like, you know, women aren't allowed to fight, which I think was the case. But then later on, like, there's a scene where she just has her helmet off, surrounded by men, and no one seems to care. So, which is kind of weird, but I don't know. Yeah, she's a good character. She's a great character. But also, I find it kind of weird that is she just really well trained? Like, she managed to take out the Witch King pretty easily. Like, if she is that good a warrior, why the hell wouldn't you ever fight her? But I don't know. Gender politics in Middle Earth. Yeah, like I said, there's not a lot of women characters in this, so it's good to see her involved. Oh, God, I didn't talk about one of the weirder ones in the first film. See, this is what happens. My brain is just mushing all these films together because I saw them at the same time. Gimli, the fucking creep. So they go to see, what is it, Galadriel? Is that it? Kate Blanchett's character? And they're all given, like, gifts, and he's like, and at first he's pretty suave. It's like, Gimli, son of Gloin, what would you like? And he's like, just another look at you, my fair lady. And you're like, hey, pretty suave, dude. And then he's like, actually, there is one more thing I want. And then it's like, oh, I got 3 hairs from her head. Dude, that's fucking creepy, man. What are you doing? And it's weird. Those presents as well are like, it's like, you have a sword. You have a sword. You have this undying light. Here's some rope. And they use it like once. And then it's like, oh, I guess that served its narrative purpose. Rope. It's kind of funny. Actually, that's another thing. God, I'm just remembering parts of it as well. The first film, I love that even though this is a fantasy film, that we get the old cliche of the bulletproof vest. You know, like every cop film ever, where it's like he's shot, and they're all like, no, and then he's like, thank God I was wearing one of these. Frodo has one of those with an elvish vest and a sword. It's nice to see that they managed to keep a bulletproof vest scare in. It's pretty funny though. Third film, as I said, where did I leave that? Is there anything else I need to say? I think there's some dodgy effects in this one at times. Like there's one where people just look a little bit rubbery. Legolas on coming down that elephant just looks odd. Kind of feels like they strayed away from the kind of more realistic side of the character there, where he can just basically do anything, which is something I think that the Hobbit films would really double down on. And there's that really bad scene. Effects wise, I was like, I actually could have done a better job than this. Which all the hobbits are standing in front of a green screen and they're being given medals, they're being bowed to. And it's just so clearly a green screen and it doesn't even look good. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I could have done a better job of this. It just looks terrible. Anyway. Third film's very, very good. It does take about an hour to end though, doesn't it? And I know as well, like the whole thing with the eagles, everyone gives shit. Like, look, I get it. I understand why people are annoyed that the eagles just come up, and I know they give it like a hand wavy line of like, the eagles don't dabble in affairs of men. Oh well, they did before, and they did there. So, and also like, they might not dabble in the affairs or whatever men or whatever the fuck, but if the world is taken over, probably would affect them. No, yeah. Anyway, it doesn't bother me that much, you know. That kind of, you have to have some sort of thing for a story like that's like Alfred Hitchcock's Alfred Hitchcock when it's like, why did they call the police? Because then that'd be very boring. Fair enough. The film does take like an hour to end. Like, it's all wrapped up. Like, and it's funny because I remember seeing this so vividly at the time when I first saw it in cinemas. I'm like, it's over. Oh, it's not over. Oh, okay. It's like, oh, we're all back. And Frodo's alive, and every character like comes in to bounce on the bed or whatever. It's like Merry, bounce on the bed, Pippin, bounce on the bed, Sam, Legolas, Gimli. It's like I wanted them to keep going with that scene until it got really awkward. Like, oh, man-eating carrot, prancing pony owner. And just keep going until all these characters are like, yay! I just find it so weird. It's such a weird scene. Like, I know, like, the film has such a, and like people have corrupted it to be like, oh, these films are so gay. There's like clear like homosexual undertones between Sam and Frodo, and yeah, that's kind of there. But there's such a kind of like sweetness to them. Sort of not, I wouldn't call it a camp quality, although there is some of that with some of the visual effects and the horror stuff, where it looks very kind of like stylized as opposed to going for a realistic look. But yeah, there's such a kind of a sweetness to it in that regard, that hopefully just kind of stays untainted throughout the years. And then we have a scene where like they're like, oh, let's get on the boat, everybody. Everyone's like getting on the boat. It's like, Frodo, you're coming too. And it's like, what? And then he's saying goodbye to everyone. This goes on forever again. And then it's like a scene, and then Frodo's writing a book. And then it's like, hey, Sam, you're also going to write in this book. And it just goes on and on and on. And then it's like, oh, Sam got married and Sam had kids. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, they could have just ended it a lot earlier, really. I get why they put in, like, they wanted everyone to have like a proper ending, it feels like. But what's really funny is like, it feels like everyone kind of gets a bit of a write-off, except for Gimli. Gimli's like barely mentioned that. As soon as it all ends, it's like, oh, that's that. Anyway, Lord of the Rings, I don't need to say much. These are excellent films. The extended ones are well worth seeking out. I'm not going to watch The Hobbit because I tried watching The Hobbit and I just couldn't get into it before, so I'm not going to try now. But yeah, that's not the only big kind of franchise that I've been checking out because of cinemas. So this is going to be kind of an ongoing feature, kind of a sub-feature of the one that I watch, which is where I watch the Harry Potter films. So here we go, Tommy Potter and the Podcast of Gripes. That's right, Tommy Potter and the Podcast of Gripes. This is where I look back at the Harry Potter films. So I've seen the first two so far. And of course I'm going to see the other ones. I'll probably see the third one. Maybe actually the day I'm recording this, I'll go see the third one. And I'll see maybe one a week that we'll try to cover. Now I'm gonna start this by, I preface this by saying I'm not like a massive Harry Potter fan. I've seen all the films before. I read 6 of them books. I never got around to reading the last one because it just got spoiled for me, and I was like, yeah, grand. So that should tell you alone I'm not like a massive, passionate Harry Potter fan. I like them. I just don't get the mad appeal for them. Like, there's people who like dedicate their whole like life and wardrobe to Harry Potter, and I don't get it. So that's the disclaimer before this. If I say something, I'm not doing it to be mean. I'm like, help me understand. Okay. Starting with Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, or if you're American, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, because apparently Americans won't know what a philosopher is. I don't know. Yeah, this is like such an amazing kids film. I know that sounds like a weird caveat, but this is probably more so than any other ones. It actually feels like this is a kids one. There's a degree of like wonder to it, and it's shot in such a kind of a charming kind of a way. And it also, like, you know, there's kind of bits of morality in there. There's just the right amount of scares to it that you can show it to kids. It's got such a lovely charm to it. And comparing that even to, like, Chamber of Secrets. Chamber of Secrets, like, gets dark. Like, I always, like, in my head, and the kind of narrative I heard a lot of people say is like, oh, the third one, that's where they get dark. Dude, the second one is dark. Like, watch it again. It's pretty dark. So, I find these films, like, I was of the kind of, like, casual fan where I didn't rush out to necessarily see them when they were in cinemas. I just kind of caught them after. And I'm enjoying watching them kind of, you know, through new eyes, I guess, of a more cynical adult than a child. And I don't fully, like, I find this world baffling. Because it seems in some ways to be so inconsistent in its kind of layout, in the rules and the magic. Like, the magic is so nebulous in these films. And I know someone's now going to, you know, write a thesis why I'm wrong, or direct me to a tweet by J.K. Rowling. Remember the simpler times when J.K. Rowling used to just tweet like, oh, wizard shit on the floor, and everyone was like, yay! And now she's just tweeting horrible fucking transphobic shit. like, okay, so where do I get started with this? Harry is like at the zoo with his cousin, and he manages to make the glass disappear without a wand randomly. And I'm like, okay, I know some people can do magic without wands. I think that's established. I think that happens a couple of times. Fine. How was he able to do that? Like how? Like he's never learned any magic. You can just do magic without knowing it. And if that's the case, is that how they find wizards? It's like, oh, you can do something magic, you're a wizard. So, by that regard, how is anyone that's got Muggle parents able to just pick up magic? How does that work? I don't know. I'm sure that's just a very vague thing. They're like, random people can do magic. Fine, whatever. He ends up going to Hogwarts. And, you know, like, I find Hogwarts very, very weird as well as a school, as a concept, because it's like, well, first of all, actually, I want to talk about one of the funnier things in the movie I find very odd. Like, all this magic, and we're meant to be taken in by the whimsy of this world. Wow, this is moving. This is alive. Woo. And like it's so funny because all this magic is like a fucking talking hat, randomly appearing like fucking food on the table magically. All these amazing illusions, all this magic stuff. And I remember like there's a part in the movie where someone is just like, wow, the paintings move. I'm like, you just saw a ghost like 2 minutes ago and you're impressed at a moving, like, let's be honest, that's just a frame TV. That could be that. Although I was wondering, like, see, like, I'm skeptical enough and not passionate enough about the Harry Potter stuff that I like spend time analyzing the minutia. Like when I'm looking at the pictures, I'm like, so are those people actually, like, are they actually alive? Is that just like some sort of, is that like a screensaver? Like they seem to respond to things in the environment and things around them. Like I guess that's just a spell, but like, is that someone just trapped in a painting? Because that sounds terrible. Like, I don't know. Anyway, Hogwarts as a school, I don't get it. We have 4 schools or 4 houses in Hogwarts. We have Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff, Slytherin. And it's so weird that like it's just accepted. Like, hey, Gryffindor are the good guys, Slytherin the bad guys. Got it? Cool. It's so clear they're the bad guys. They make and do you know what? I think I'd be in Slytherin, man, because no wonder they're bad. Like the end of this film, spoilers. Like Harry saves the day. Oh god, I'll get to that in a sec. So Harry saves the day, you know, and Slytherin are winning comfortably. But then some bullshit, dude. Like Slytherin got fucked over. Like absolutely. They're just like, oh Harry, you get 50 points for doing this. You get 50 points. They give him just enough points to just narrowly beat them. The last minute. That is nonsense. And they do it in the second book apparently as well. Like I vaguely remember it being in the second book. And it wasn't in the film, so I looked it up. Yeah, it basically happens again. That's some bullshit, man. I was talking about Harry there, right? I don't want to hear anyone ever say Mary Sue again. Okay? Because if anyone says that, if they're a Harry Potter fan, I'm sorry, go back and eat your fucking words. Harry is just, I think I hate Harry Potter. Like the character, I think I hate him. He's so uninteresting and boring. And everywhere he goes, everyone's just telling him how amazing he is. It's like, oh, Harry, you wiped your ass. You're 1,000 points for Gryffindor. Well done. And you're the first person to wipe your ass, Harry. Well done. And no one's ever thought of doing it that way. Congratulations. Yay. Not that specifically. But like, oh, Harry, that's amazing. No one's ever done that spell. Oh, Harry, fantastic. Oh, Harry, you are going to be able to play Quidditch because you were amazing at wearing that broom even though you didn't ever ride a broom before. And Harry, you're the youngest Quidditch player ever. And Harry, you're going to catch the golden snitch. And no, it's like, everything he does, he's just amazing at, and everything great happens to him, and everyone thinks he's great. Like, I was thinking this at the time. Like, it reminded me of like, you know, there's an episode of Community where like all the casts and all the people we follow, they're like, wait, I thought you liked us, and then like everyone else is like, we hate you guys. You're just stealing all the focus, and like you think it's all about you, like you're selfish shitheads. I'm waiting from like someone from Hufflepuff to just be like, Harry Potter's a douche, man. It's always about him and his fucking friends, and he's not that impressive. What? Oh, he survived a spell. Wow, way to go! It's like, it's just odd. I just find the whole fame thing is really weird. Like, just think of it this way, right? I know this is a magical world. Imagine if someone like survived a horrific attack by some terrorist, and the child survived with a scare or whatever. Would you like be going around like decades later? I'm not a decade and a half, maybe at most, being like, "Oh, that's the kid with the scare. Look, he's famous. Wow, can I get a pic?" Like, he survived a horrific attack, and you're just like, "Yeah, let me get a photo." Ugh. It's just I just find it very odd, like the kind of way this world works. It's also with Voldemort. Like, for the first film, it's like, we don't say his name. And then, like, by the third entry and by later on, they're like, fucking Voldemort, right? Woo, Voldemort. Hey, it's Voldemort over there, Voldemort. They just throw that rule out the window, kind of, I guess. Another thing they throw out the window is a lot of the spells. Like, there's so many spells here that I'm like, that would have been useful. Why don't you ever use that again? Like, they can just open any lock, seemingly. Which also, Hogwarts again, back to this. This is what these films do to me, man. Going back to Hogwarts, they set up a thing that first year students can easily get past, and it's meant to keep out Voldemort. Like, also, why are you keeping something so dangerous in a school? Like, what sort of school is this anyway? Like I guess at the age of 12 in the Harry Potter universe, it's just like, yeah, you've learned all the English, maths, and all those subjects you need. Now you're just going to learn magic. Okay, that seems odd. You're not going to learn like basic life skills. Just, hey, here's how you fucking float a feather. It's just very odd. And also, like, even something like the stairs moving and this kind of stuff. Like, some of this world is just unlivable. Like, the stairs are moving. Like, imagine in reality of being in the school, you're like, I have to get to class, and then the stairs moves, and you're like, right. Oh, I can't get the stairs to move back. I'm just right. Show up to class like an hour late, and you're like, sorry, the stairs moved on me. I couldn't do anything. They have a spell to knock someone out. That's never used again, I don't think. There's a spell in the second one where they remove bones. Dude, Voldemort comes at you. Bonus removus or whatever the fuck. He's a puddle on the floor. You just stamp on him. Like, all these spells that are useless are never used again. I also find it weird, like, some of the spells are, like, really complex. Like, or they're in Latin. And then there's spells where, like, it'll just be like, eat slugs. That's the name of that spell? How does that work? Why would everything not just be named what it does? Or in everything named in Latin? And, like, also, like, let's talk about wands. This show is going to be really long. I'm just, like, as soon as I got into this, I was like, this was a mistake. Wands, like, why are they allowed to have wands in school? And I know they use them for good reason, right? But these are basically guns. Like, they're used to kill people. They're used to do everything. They're like a tool that can do anything. But let's be honest, like, a lot of it's used as a weapon. You're giving people just a gun, and I guess you're hoping that they're going to be responsible. But also, like, the safety procedures in the school don't make any sense. It's like, at one point, Neville is just on a broom, like, miles and miles up in the air, and the teacher, like, has no recourse. He's just like, come down, Mr. Neville, Mr. Longbottom, come down. There's not like a spell, so it'll be like, ground us, pound us. I don't know. It's just really weird. Like, I feel like, and then there's other things like that, like, where it's just like, that doesn't seem safe. Like, there's a whomping willow on the ground. Like, I know it's been there for ages, but you don't want to put up a sign up. You don't want to maybe do something so people don't get attacked by a tree and nearly killed. There's lots of stuff like that. There's a giant snake living in Hogwarts, and they're just like, yeah, it's a perfect place for a school. This school is dangerous, man. This school should be shut down. First film, as I said, kind of gone through some of the things that bug me. Do unicorns ever come up in Harry Potter again? They're like, oh, he's drinking unicorn blood, and it's a horrible thing to kill a unicorn, Harry, and oh, it kills your soul or whatever, because I guess souls are actually a thing in this universe. But I don't think unicorns will ever come up again, do they? Anyway. Yeah, it's a great film. It's a lot of fun. The first one I enjoy a lot, actually. I think it's a very good kind of kids film in that way. But it feels like the sort of kids film they don't make anymore. And normally when we say that, we're talking about movies like from decades ago, but it actually feels like this is one of the exceptions to that rule. There's a good bit of darkness, good bit of complexity. It's just about the right length. It nearly feels too long. I also want to give a shout out to the castings of this movie. I mean, they lucked out. I just did the Joker lip noise. Let's put a smile on that face. The casting of these films, they really lucked out with the young actors. Like, talk about actors that just actually turned out to be really, really capable and really fantastic in their roles. They really were very fortunate with that. Great casting there. But even like the supporting roles, Richard Harris as Dumbledore. These are the two films where he's Dumbledore, and it's weird because like growing up, I barely even distinguished him. I wasn't like committed enough to the films. I didn't see the films enough to be like, oh, it's a new Dumbledore. I barely even noticed the change, to be honest. As a lot of kids probably wouldn't. Now watching it, like I'm like, I think he's a better Dumbledore. He has a certain sternness and authority that Michael Gambon doesn't have. He just has a real kind of command to him. I think he's so damn good in these films. And apparently he didn't want to do these films, and he also didn't want to be remembered for these films. So, sorry. Sorry, Richard Harris. You were in the field. Hey, look, I'm not just remembering it for Harry Potter. He's excellent as it. And a lot of the teachers in general are great. I mean, like Alan Rickman as Snape is just excellent. I do know the whole twist with him. It just seems really weird though, like, because I don't know if they knew the twist when they made these films early on, because obviously all the books hadn't come out yet. And like half the time he's just being a dick. And I'm like, oh, is he trying to just throw people off the scent, I guess, that he likes Harry? I don't know. It just seems very odd. Like, and sometimes I'm like, how do you turn that around? I don't know. It's just odd. Who else do we have? Robbie Coltrane as Hagrid. Oh, he's fantastic, man. Hagrid, I love Hagrid a lot more watching these films, especially the first two films. He's just such a lovable character. He's fantastic. Of course, Maggie Smith and Miss McGonagall as well. Not much to be said about her. She doesn't really have to do much, but she provides a kind of great authority figure. It's not a character with a lot of depth, is what I mean. But yeah, really, really, really good. I was actually speaking about Community. The guy who plays Magnitude, Pop. He's in these films. He's in these first two. He's the guy counting the score at the Quidditch games. And I looked up the actor's name. His name actually sounds like a Harry Potter character. His name is Luke Youngblood, which is pretty cool. I don't know what else I have to say certainly about the first one. As I said, casting is excellent. It's a fantastic kind of kids film with a good balance of stuff. Oh, actually, before I talk about casting, I want to talk about some of the smaller characters, because God, they nail, like, watching these movies, I actually love some of the smaller characters more than some of the major characters, like Filch. Oh, I love that character. Anytime he's there, he's just such a nasty, grimy fucker. Like, and the way he delivers his lines is great. Where he's just like, "You shouldn't be out here." I've just thought of more things that annoy you about Harry Potter, but I'll come back to it. The Dudleys, I love. Like, all the Dudleys are excellent, but Vernon, is it the dad? Dude, I think that actor passed away. I'm gutted. I would watch every film if he was like this, and he's so damn good. He has a perfect look for it as well. He's just, every line he says has me in stitches. He's just so over the top. It's brilliant. I was going to talk about Quidditch. It's, why is that game legal? Like, again, it's one of these things where I'm like, is there any safety procedures? No, like, load of people must just die playing Quidditch, right? Because like, what was it, Oliver Wood, the goalkeeper, he gets knocked down and he just like tumbles slowly. But like, it feels like that was just luck. He could have easily just fallen to his death and there was nothing to do can stop him. So, just weird, man. I think the magic in this film only works as much as the plot needs it to. And that it's a totally unlivable world in some ways. But there you go. Second one, or basically Harry Potter and everyone is racist. There's racism in the Wizarding World as well, basically, because it's like, oh, you're what, a mudblood or whatever. It's just weird. I mean, basically the Malfoys kind of just go from being kind of like generally shitty bully evil to white supremacist evil in the space of like that, like straight away. This is on its way too long, in my opinion. You can really feel the length of it. It's sort of weird. It feels a bit less connected to like a larger narrative than the first one does. Mind you, I don't really get Voldemort either. Like, I don't know why he's like grafted onto a guy's head in the first one. I'm like, why? I don't know. It's kind of just seems very, very odd to me. and then he's like, it like shows a flashback, and he's like Tom Mervale or Riddle in this or whatever, with his diary. Yeah, I think this one is okay. We have, of course, Kenneth Branagh as Lockhart, the new dark arts professor. He's good in the film. He kind of really suits that role, but I do find it really weird that like whatever about moms loving him, I find it so weird that like the students, the female students, are like, I'm like, I don't know about that, man. That doesn't look right. It's also not a good optics. Like, what sort of school is this? I just find this one to be good, but not great. Also, we have we go back to Diagon Alley here, and this is another thing where I'm like, if you really question, if you kind of scratch that little bit off, the whole thing doesn't make sense. So we have the fireplace transport system of this, the travel or whatever it is, where you save the place and then you throw the powder and then you magically end up there. And did they just call Diagon Alley just for this scene to work? So Harry says diagonally, and he gets transported somewhere, which also just makes me kind of go like, how does this fireplace system work? Like, could you just go anywhere? There's a fireplace, and like you went to Diagon Alley. Is it just any fireplace in Diagon Alley, or is it just one specific one? How does that work? Like, and diagonally aware? Was he diagonally at the initial fireplace or the last place transported? How was that? What? And why is he? It just seems right. Like, again, it's one of those things where like as soon as you start nitpicking, you're like, oh, I guess it doesn't make sense. I don't know what else there is to say about this film. We have the flying car. That's another one where as soon as I start picking apart the rules, I'm like, how does it work exactly? And it's weird. They're like, they make all this thing about them traveling and showing muggles like magic. While the Weasleys have a magic house, basically everything is magic, and I guess that's fine. I don't know. I'm trying to think, is there much else about this film? I found this one's kind of this one's a bit of a drag in my opinion. It's way too long. It's the last one directed by Chris Columbus as well. He's kind of apparently slavishly delayed to the books. Devoted? What did I say? Delated? Devoted to the books. I've got delays in the mind because everything is being delayed. And I think this one, it just feels that little bit too long. It's still good. The whole Chamber of Secrets kind of mystery goes on a little bit too long. Polyjuice Potion is a thing you can you probably use a bit more. I know they use it in the last book as well. Feels like you could have got a bit more use out of that, to be honest. I think, like, here's the other thing, right? Are Hogwarts, is Dumbledore are they just cool with ghosts hanging around? That's kind of weird, right? Like, they just have a ghost in one of the bathrooms. Like, is that ghost just looking on people going to the bathroom? Like, is you're just cool with it? I know they say no one uses that bathroom, but like, is that what happens? Like, someone just dies in the school, there's a ghost of them, and it's like, well, we can't use that room anymore. Like, it's just odd. I find some of the rules of this world that don't make much sense to me. I don't know. There's a big snake, the basilisk, which, yeah, people again are always saying like the third one is where it gets dark. A phoenix tears out the eyes of a giant snake and Harry stabs it through the head. Yeah, it gets dark. It gets dark here, okay? Let's just stop that narrative right there. It's weird how much they've aged as well between both films. It feels like they really kind of they grew up a lot in between the first and second film. And of course they'll continue to grow as we carry on watching the Harry Potter films. So that's what's coming to my head. I'm sure I'll have more nitpicks and more annoyances as we go on. I do like actually how also really dark, actually, talking about Lockhart or whatever, how everyone just sees through his shit and the staff are just like happy to see him like get killed, where he's like, oh, I know where the Chamber of Secrets is, and he's like, oh, I sure do, and they're like, oh, well, maybe you should do it, just go ahead there, yeah, even though obviously he's going to get killed. And then he just wipes all his memories. Like, that's horrifying, but it also feels like a useful spell they could have used many times, but they don't. Anyway, we'll come back to that. That's Tommy Potter and the Podcast of Grapes. It's probably going to be a bit of a recurring feature as we go on here. And, you know, that brings us to sort of our big feature this week, which is we're going to talk about Joel Schumacher's unmade third Batman film. So here we go. This is a Pop Cult Pod feature. If there's any superhero who's been a popular one to adapt for the big screen, it is certainly The Dark Knight. Since Tim Burton made the big budgeted, darker take on the Bat in 1989, we've rarely had that much of a gap between cinematic outings for Batman, with one big exception. The 8-year period after Batman and Robin and before Batman Begins. I mean, they only left 4 years between the end of the Nolan trilogy before putting him in the DCU. So why was there such a big gap? Even at the worst of times, Batman as a franchise could make enough money to make Bruce Wayne blush. Well, what if there wasn't meant to be a big gap? What if there had been a lot of projects that fell by the wayside? And what if the man who killed the Batman franchise to so many people with Batman and Robin had come back, as was intended, to make another film? This is the story of Joel Schumacher's third Batman film.
This is how the Batman died.
So, with the death of Joel Schumacher, and I mean, let's be honest, Batman is pretty much always relevant, I figured now is as good a time as any to look at what this film was, what it could have been. This is an odd one because normally when you look at projects from development hell, people talk very, very openly about it, and there's a lot of detail about its development. But with Batman Triumphant, we only have rumor, generally speaking, because people haven't spoken that much about it, and there's not a lot to go on. And I say triumphant in quotation marks because the truth is that's not the name of the movie, but everyone thinks it is because of the pervasive online rumors about it. People called it Batman Triumphant, and it kind of stuck. But according to the writer of the film, Mark Protasevich, it was never meant to be Batman Triumphant. In fact, the film would have been called Batman Unchained. Now let's just dig into that for a second. Joel Schumacher is a name that a lot of people have associated with Batman. In fact, when he died, Batman trended on Twitter. But the truth is, that's a disservice to him as a director. He has quite a wide array of films in his filmography. St. Elmo's Fire, The Lost Boys, Flatliners, Phone Booth, and Falling Down. To be honest, he isn't just a Batman guy. He's an accomplished director that, based on the films I just named, can do darker, more serious material than,
Batman and Robin.
I also don't especially hate Schumacher's Batman. One of the reasons I think the character has, survived for so long is because you can interpret Batman in so many different ways. I think there's room for the light campiness of an Adam West Batman alongside a darker Ben Affleck version of Batman, for example. The character can work in many different ways effectively. But there's also a few things you should know about the direction that Batman went post Burton's film Batman Returns. Firstly, we should mention that Warner Bros. Weren't really impressed or pleased with Batman Returns. Even though it was clearly demand for the film, in fact, its opening weekend was bigger than the behemoth that Burton had delivered with the first 1989 Batman film. Overall, the film only managed to do 2/3 of the box office of the film that preceded it. It was also dark enough to the point that McDonald's cut short their Happy Meal promotion for the film, which is almost unheard of because they feared backlash from parents who said that they were promoting a film to kids who should not see such a dark film. I shouldn't have to tell you this stuff. I hope I don't have to. But franchises, especially back in the day, had to be able to be marketable, do promotional tie-ins, toys, and kids kind of had to see it. In fact, one of the reasons Return of the Jedi went a bit of a softer direction than was initially intended was because of toys, but I digress. That's something we might talk about another day. The point is that at the time, Warner Bros. Wanted a lighter and more family-friendly tone, which certainly explained the pivot towards Batman Forever. They didn't especially want another Burton-esque film. They wanted something more child-friendly with merchandising potential, which is exactly what Batman Forever was. In fact, Burton actually tells a story of going to Warner Bros. And saying, hey, this is my idea for a third film. This is what I'm thinking of doing. And being met with pretty much ambivalence
I'm going, you could do this, we could do that. And they go like, Tim, don't you want to do like a smaller movie now, just something that's more, and like about, half hour into the meeting, I go, you don't want me to make another one, do you?
So he assisted and helped them pick Joel Schumacher to replace him. And while Schumacher certainly opted for a more stylized version of the world, he had in fact always toyed with the idea of the films being a little bit darker. At one point, he hoped to adapt Frank Miller's Batman Year One, a darker, more grounded origin that helped inform Batman Begins. Forever was in fact a much darker in tone than what we got as well. Numerous deleted scenes have attested to that. There was a scene with Two-Face painting Bat Must Die in blood on the walls of Arkham. Bruce battling with guilt over the night his parents died. It certainly pointed to it being a darker film. And since Schumacher's death, there's been renewed talk of a director's cut of Batman Forever that was darker than what we got in the end. The point being that Schumacher is no stranger to darker work and may have even envisioned at first to bring a darker version to the screen. And despite people's misgivings, Batman Forever was a huge success. Domestically, it was the biggest film of 1995. And that surprises a lot of people now, but it was a big surprise even then. Nobody expected this film to be as big as it was. It was such a success that Warner Bros. Actually ditched the 3-year gap between the last few Batman films and instead wanted 2 years between Batman Forever and the next Batman film, which meant that Joel Schumacher went straight from Batman Forever to his next film, A Time to Kill, and then went to Batman and Robin year after year after year. Any uneasiness that toy companies may have had after Batman Returns had totally dissipated. Warner Bros. Apparently made as much as $125 million just from tie-ins, merchandise, and toys from the next film, Batman and Robin. And if you talk to Joel Schumacher, he basically said that toy companies wanted nothing to do with them really for Batman Forever. They were kind of not too sure of what they would get because they'd been burned by Batman Returns. But Batman and Robin, everyone was knocking at the door hoping to be a part of it. I say all this about Batman and Robin because I want to clarify that essentially the film was rushed. And it was a victim of a lot of insistence on being toyetic and that you could market it and make toys out of it. It was also in an interesting position that is common for films today, but wasn't so much so back in 1997, in that this was a franchise with broad public appeal, to most of the 4 quadrants, young men, young women, older women. Also, it was at a time when the internet was making the speculation and reporting of rumors and leaks more accessible and available than before. I mean, nowadays it's common that all films kind of get this scrutiny, but back then this was one of the few big franchises based on an established IP, leading to more intense scrutiny. And that's not to excuse Batman and Robin, but just to say that it was always under pressure to perform well, and it did so under scrutiny from fans, corporate greed, and a very tight schedule. As much as I actually don't mind the film, when you view it as a campy extension of Adam West's Batman from the 60s, I think it's okay and a bit more enjoyable. There's no other way to put it though. Batman and Robin bit them on the ass, like hard, right on the badass. All that being said, before the film was released, and even for some time after, there was excitement in the Batman property. They thought the film was going to do well. So much so that after seeing the dailies, they actually wanted Schumacher to start work on a sequel to Batman and Robin, preliminary set for 1999. This was to be Batman Unchained. The reason I want to establish all this was for a few reasons. Number one, generally speaking, Joel Schumacher doesn't direct kids' fare. In fact, generally speaking, he does smaller films. And number two, there was indications he wanted a darker film from the get-go. And finally, Warner Bros. Clearly wanted a different direction for the next film, given the critical failure of Batman and Robin. I felt that should be established, as some people kind of try to suggest that Schumacher is retroactively claiming he would have made Batman Begins, but that's not really in the spirit of what he said. In fact, as far back as 1998, he told Variety, "I felt I disappointed a lot of older fans by being too conscious of the family aspect. I'd gotten tens of thousands of letters from parents asking a film that their children could go to. Now I owe the hardcore fans the Batman movie they would love me to give them." In essence, the Batman franchise sort of swung from dark to child-friendly and was preparing to swing back to dark once again. George Clooney was actually still had a contract, and he expressed interest in returning to see what he could have done better. And by mid-98, Schumacher told E! Online that he discussed with producers him doing another Batman film that was smaller in scale, had less villains, and was more true to the comic books. Naturally, as he had indicated before, he gravitated to looking at Year One for inspiration. Around this time, though, Warner Bros. Really didn't seem sure what to do with The Dark Knight, though. Seemingly having failed with the lighter tone and alienated people with the darker tone, they were left not entirely sure how to proceed with Batman. In fact, as many as 5 Batman projects were developed and cancelled before Batman Begins, none of which saw the light of day. In fact, their cold feet and concern after the box office of Batman and Robin even led to them cancelling Superman Lives with Nicolas Cage as Superman. What exactly would this film have been, though? This Batman Unchained or Batman Triumphant? Schumacher intended this to be his last Batman film, and likely would have been a point where the character took a break for a while to avoid people getting burnt out on the bat. With that in mind, a new writer was hired in Mark Protosevich, and it's through Mark that we get a good indication of what this film would have been. He said it was indeed going to be a darker take on Batman, that he intended to do a psychological dive into the character and why Bruce Wayne wants to dress as a bat and fight crime. On Schumacher's part, he said he wanted the film to have a much lower budget, presumably because he wanted it to have a better chance of being made, because he teased that he expected Warner Bros. To kick him out of the building after he pitched it, which, yeah, that's probably a bit hyperbolic, but did you expect subtlety from the guy who put nipples on the batsuit? Come on. So let's start with the story first, because the film apparently would have had Batman confronting his past and conquering his fears. The other problem is that Batman and Robin have a falling out throughout the course of the film, and as a result, we don't see Robin till towards the end of the film, and it leads to Bruce being incredibly tormented. To make matters much worse for Batman, he has to battle 2 villains this time around, Scarecrow and Harley Quinn. And interestingly enough, each villain has a different problem with each persona. Scarecrow has a problem with Bruce Wayne, while Harley Quinn has a problem with Batman. Now, you might be thinking, what's going on with Harley Quinn here? Because she's the Joker's sidekick, and the Joker's dead, and Harley wasn't there, so how is this going to work? Well, the thing is, the biggest difference this makes to the source material is that in this iteration, Harley Quinn is not the Joker's sidekick, he is the Joker's daughter. So a big part of Batman confronting his past was actually fighting Harley Quinn, who wants revenge for her father. Throughout the course of the film, Scarecrow manages to find out that Bruce was Batman, leading to him eventually teaming up with Harley to drive him insane and send him to Arkham Asylum. Scarecrow, as you would expect, hopes to accomplish this with the use of fear toxin, leading to one of the most talked about scenes from the film, where in the final act, while dosed with fear toxin, Batman hallucinates in a scene that would have tied together all the previous Batman entries up till now. In a hallucinatory state, he sees Riddler, Two-Face, Catwoman, Penguin, and most notably, the Joker. And not only that, but they hope to get the actors back who portrayed them: Tommy Lee Jones, Jim Carrey, Michelle Pfeiffer, Danny DeVito, and of course, Jack Nicholson. When all hope appears lost, Robin returns. Some have suggested he actually returns as Nightwing. That's never been confirmed. And they defeat the baddies once and for all. Our film ends with Batman in a cave in Bali, surrounded by bats, having now conquered his fear. Cut to black. So that's the general story of Batman Unchained. The finer points of the film and the script generally escape us though, but seemingly Batgirl was not in the script, so the film would mostly have been Batman going it alone. And we also heard a rumour that there was going to be a courtroom scene where Batman is confronted by his rogues gallery from the past films, which is a bit odd because they're in the last act as well, so are you going to ruin the reveal and have him in the middle of the film, or are you just going to have him after he's already defeated him? It doesn't make much sense, but it could have been the script, but I doubt it would ever actually have made it to the film had it been made. Another problem is that only one draft of the script was ever actually written. Mark Protosevich was hired to write this in 1996, and by 1997, Batman and Robin had come out and been a disappointment by his own admission. He only finished the script when Batman and Robin opened, which means it was unlikely that this would ever have come to fruition after the disastrous reception of Batman and Robin. The other thing is that the script never leaked online, as is quite rare for films in development. Hell, there is a rumoured script online, but it doesn't line up with any of the plot details, and honestly, it's so amateurishly written that either it would have been a dreadful film, or more likely, in my opinion, it's a fake, elaborate script. That being said, it seemed like there was a sort of miscommunication in general, because Joel Schumacher had intentions of making this a very small, low-budget film, but the feedback that Protosevich got from Warner Bros. Was that the script he had turned in would be the most expensive film of all time, likely due to paying for all those actors to return. Jack Nicholson does not come cheap. In a time when the returns on Batman were a low point, it didn't seem wise to double down on the cast and director of the previous film while also splashing out on bringing actors back for not a lot of screen time, especially considering that the franchise had kind of lost a lot of the goodwill it had built up in previous entries, especially after Batman and Robin. Other aspects we do know, though, are casting, some rumoured and some seemingly confirmed. For the role of Scarecrow, rumours range from the likes of Jeff Goldblum, Steve Buscemi to Christopher Lloyd, and most unusually Howard Stern. One of the closest confirmations we have is apparently that Joel Schumacher went to the set of Face Off and offered the role to Nicolas Cage, which is close we've got to confirmation in the casting, but it also seems a bit contradictory because he would have been in line to play Superman for Warner Bros. Ill-fated Superman Lives. Coolio insists that he was going to be playing the Scarecrow, and that was the reason for him randomly popping up in Batman and Robin, was to set up for him appearing as the villain in the sequel, which seems odd considering he was overseeing a street race in that film. So it's kind of hard to understand why Jonathan Crane would be looking at street races, but there you go. The role of Harley Quinn, though, had some high-profile names attached, including Madonna and Courtney Love. While writer Mark Rodasevich admits he did meet with Love, he says the role never came up. But he said he had a lovely lunch, one of his better ones in Hollywood, which is nice. Which doesn't make things any clearer for this proposed Batman entry. The rumours of casting don't stop there, though, and some suggesting that Batman himself would actually have been recast, with Joel Schumacher offering the role to Kurt Russell, much to the annoyance of producers who saw him as too old. And I spoke before about how this film faced a new scrutiny from the internet, which was rare at the time, and in keeping with that, rumours were so out of control to the point that the prominent rumour website Dark Horizons actually put a moratorium on Batman Triumphant rumours, which is unheard of now. This, coupled with the relative silence from those involved, the abundance of Batman projects in development at the time, and indeed the brief window it was developed for, have only added to the confusion surrounding Schumacher's third Batman to this day. What does seem conclusive is that the film wanted to be a back-to-basics approach after the overblown previous entries, and they hoped that it would be darker and more psychological, and the budget was hoping to be smaller, but in trying to tie a bow on this era Batman films, the budget soared. It was a film very much at odds with itself, like the director of the lightest, campiest Batman film is now going to give you the darkest and most psychological take yet. It's somehow standalone and something new, but also here's all the characters from the previous Batman films to tie together this sort of era of Batman. It was going to be a low budget, stripped down version of the movie, but it's also going to be the most expensive film of all time. Harvey Dent's personality is less split than the intentions of this film, and that no doubt was one of the factors that led to Warner Bros. Never really pursuing it, but it was far from the only one. It's June 29th, 1997. Batman and Robin's second weekend has just come to an end, with an almost unprecedented drop for the time between the weekends of 63%. The Bat franchise as we know it is dead. The film is ravaged by critics and audiences alike, and over Warner Brothers, a Mexican standoff of finger pointing and blame throwing commences about who birthed Batman and Robin. Joel Schumacher issues an apology for his work.
If I disappointed them in any way, then I really want to apologize, because it wasn't my intention. My intention was just to entertain them.
George Clooney apparently to this day offers refunds to people who can prove they've seen the film, and in his office still he has a photo of himself in costume to remind himself not to pursue big budget films. The film sort of ascends to a legendary height for killing a once lucrative franchise, and to this day is a go-to when describing a massive studio blunder that can kill a lucrative franchise. And with all that said, it's not really surprised that Batman Unchained was never pursued, as soon as you put from the director of Batman and Robin on a Batman film, it might as well be a kiss of death. It's understandable rarity that a film that flops gets a sequel, and even if it does, there's generally a massive creative overhaul, and especially in the stakes are as high as Batman. The thing is, Batman Unchained, or Batman Triumphant, whatever you choose to call it, only had one draft ever written, and that was done in anticipation of Batman and Robin succeeding. And sequels being developed in anticipation of success is fairly common. It shows confidence in that property, gets some buzz going, and it's generally a pretty cheap investment, and for a bulletproof franchise, it means you can strike while the iron is hot for the next movie. Batman should have been a bulletproof franchise, and when it wasn't, they pumped the brakes on everything. As mentioned, even Superman wasn't safe from the fallout of Batman and Robin. The truth is, when you kill the momentum of a franchise like this, it can often be pretty hard to restart. The bigger problem with Batman was that Warner Bros. Did not know how to proceed, as evidenced by the multitude of Batman projects they developed and scrapped in the years that followed. Considering that making Batman dark had led them to Schumacher in the first place, they were understandably gun-shy of going the dark route again. Certainly with Schumacher at the helm anyway. And while in theory this Batman would have worked on paper, it just didn't make much sense. Bringing in a director who just recently failed with a property and a writer in Protosevich who was unproven to wrap up a film series that had already lacked any real tonal cohesion or connection to begin with just didn't make any sense. In the shadow of the Bat, many of the people involved had very different career trajectories. Despite working on some notable projects, Mark Protosevich is probably best known for working on the films that never actually got made, which aside from Batman included his version of Jurassic Park 4, which never came to fruition. Meanwhile, Joel Schumacher was forever branded as the man who ruined Batman, but despite this, got consistent work on admittedly smaller scale films that varied in critical and commercial success. He honestly felt like a man who was happier with a smaller scale film, and certainly he remained true to that up until his recent passing. Meanwhile, over at Warner Bros. And the Batman series, in 2005 they would successfully reboot the film series with Batman Begins, which was a darker and more psychological take on the character that was felt very much informed by Frank Miller's Year One, and featured Scarecrow as a villain. And it's hard to wonder if, even unconsciously, there may have been some influence of the Unmade Schumacher film. Others have pointed to the Arkham video game series as having elements from the Protosevich scripts, and if nothing else, it's fun to speculate on what might have happened had we gotten a film like Batman Begins years earlier and how that would have informed the franchise and the Batman character as a whole. Unfortunately, in a project that's shrouded in such secrecy, that's really all we have. Speculation of what could have been. But it's hard not to wonder, had Batman been Unchained, could Batman truly have been triumphant? And with that, we come to the end of the Pop Cult Pod, the new Pop Cult Pod. It's not called the Pop Cult Pod. I'm not changing the name. I'm doing this on video, man. What do you want from me? I know what you want from me. You want some useless IMDb trivia. Well, here you go.
All trivia may be useless, but no trivia is more useless than useless IMDb trivia. That's a piece of trivia too.
This is exactly what it sounds like. We only got to do it the once before I stopped making podcasts. It is trivia from the IMDb page that is entirely useless. If you're not aware, the IMDb page for trivia, basically facts, random connections and stuff like that. But anyone could submit it. You don't need to have signed up. You don't need to be a member of the IMDb or whatever the fuck. And what you can do is submit random nonsense. Sometimes it's just someone will observe a random connection and they will submit it. And that is what is evidenced by useless IMDb trivia. So, I'm on the page for Batman and Robin. It's normally a movie we're talking about during the show, trying to find some useless IMDb trivia. And sometimes it's pretty tricky. Normally towards the bottom are the ones that are pretty bad, but let's see. Included in the A to Z superhero movies from A-Bar to Zaza via the MCU, written by Rob Hill. I mean, I would hope so. If it's A to Z, Batman and Robin, I'm going to make a wild assumption, is under B. Included in the A to Z of superhero movies from A-Bar to Zaza via the MCU, written by Rob Hill. Okay, I don't know who submitted this, but I'm telling you now, it's the writer of that book, Rob Hill. I wonder, right, could I go to any superhero film and it'd be included in the A to Z of superhero movies by Rob Hill, available here on Amazon, here's a discount code. That's not trivia. Just include every book it's in then. Why, obviously it's in the book of superhero movies. It's one of the most notable, awful superhero movies. That was just stupid, man. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. But hey, that is why it's useless. I hope you can use that information. If someone's like, hey, did you know, ladies and gentlemen, that Batman and Robin is included in the A to Z of superhero movies by Rob Hill. And by the time you said that, you would probably be kicked out of the party. Like I am. Nah, I'm just fucking with you. I'm not invited to parties. Which is why it's so important to me that you're here. And that's whether or not you're listening on the old headphones in Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, an audio broadcast, or you're doing it on YouTube here as a video broadcast, whatever way you choose to engage with the Pop Cult Pod, thank you for being here. I hope you will come back. Now that I'm on YouTube, I can finally say this. Subscribe, smash that like button, bell icon, ba-boo, boo, boo. That's right. I'm on YouTube. Check it out. A lot of great stuff on the YouTube channel. If you're only listening to it, that's fine too. But regardless of that, I hope you enjoyed yourself. I hope you will come back. And as always, it's always remained true. I can't spell cult without you.